What I meant was you might not.
Greg, when you move your chair so far away, somebody else has to be good the door.
That was Ron's job.
Just sit down and be quiet.
Okay, thank you for coming and being here. Sorry we're late. Just had some stuff to discuss, so appreciate you being here. We're going to stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance, and the invocation will be given, remain standing for invocation by Councilmember Crowder. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
God, please look over us, give us the wisdom to make the right decisions tonight with the issues before us. Please do something with all these school shootings that are happening. Please keep our first responders safe, and please look over the town of Paradise. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Roll call.
Roll call. Councilmember Crowder.
Here.
Councilmember Culleton.
Here.
Councilmember Lassonde.
Here.
Vice Mayor Tryon.
Here.
And Mayor Boland.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, before we get into proclamations, first off, I'd like to get the council's okay. We'd like to move 6H up to the front of the council consideration, if that's okay. Is there anybody that has a problem with that? Everybody okay with that? Steve?
Mr. Mayor, is your mic on?
Test, 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 test. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that. So we're going to move 6H up on the council consideration. So that was the first thing. Second thing, I need to read this, so bear with me. In order for the town council to discuss and consider authorizing and the approval of a letter to be written in opposition of the placement of a sexual violent predator in Paradise, and to sponsor legislation related to the property taxation of the Post campfire, these items must be formally added to the agenda. It takes 2/3 vote to add an item to the agenda, or less, or if less than 2/3 are present, then a unanimous vote for those present. As such, council is required to take the following action. Pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.2, the town council finds that there is a need to take immediate action and that the need came to the attention of the town after the posting of the agenda concerning the following items. Agenda item 1D1A. Consider town council authorization and approval of a letter to be written in opposition of the placement of a sexual violent predator in Paradise. 1D1B. Consider sponsorship of legislative bill AB 556 related to the property taxation of the Post campfire. So I think we need a roll call vote on this. Do you have
You
any-
need a motion and a second, Mr. Mayor.
Okay,
So
motion and
moved.
second.
Second.
Motion by Culleton, seconded by Tryon to put these items on the agenda. Councilmember Crowder.
Aye.
Councilmember Culleton.
Aye.
Councilmember Lassonde.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Tryon.
Aye.
And Mayor Boland.
Aye. All right, so unanimous. So we need to take these up right now?
So now you need to take up the first item, which is the authorization and approval of a letter to be written in opposition of the placement of a sexually violent predator in Paradise. Mr. Mayor and members of the council, as you know, there's been an announcement that this individual will be placed in the town of Paradise. And you have the ability to file a statement and a letter in opposition. I would propose that the town manager and myself draft this letter for your signatures, but to have one letter with all of your signatures on it would require the approval of the council, which is why we added this item to the agenda, or why we requested that you add it to the agenda. We can get that in the next, couple of days. And then once it's final and once everybody, once we reviewed it and incorporate all of the important information as to why the town of Paradise is not an appropriate location for this individual, then Ms. Valensky can call each of you in to come in and sign it. But it does require your approval beforehand.
Okay, any comments, the council?
I move approval of the letter.
I'll second.
Motion by Culleton, seconded
Well,
by,
before we go any further, was there anyone want to say anything about the letter? What they wanted to have included or anything?
I was just going to say that I had talked to our council and our city manager about this letter. And I would say that from my background of being a child abuse investigator and also a probation officer, there's normally always a nexus to a placement like this. And that nexus is generally that the individual has a support system and the individual has access to services. And I think both of those things are lacking in this particular placement. And so that would be my nexus for denying this individual to come into this town, so.
Okay. And council, you understand that?
Yes.
Is there anyone in the public that would like to, we didn't have any cards, obviously, because you didn't know this was coming. Anyone in the public like to speak to this? Seeing nobody jumping up, yes.
Hi,
Chief. I think this is the first, thank you.
So good evening, council. I would encourage you to attend the community meeting that I've set up at the Paradise Alliance Church on Thursday from 6:30 to 9:30 regarding this particular topic. It's my understanding that you can all attend, you just can't discuss, of course, under the Brown Act and take any action at the particular meeting. But I'll take this opportunity just to announce to you folks, as well as everybody else listening, in regard to assisting us with this opposition. We have to be constructive in our criticism and our reasons as to why it is not a good fit or a good placement of this person in our community. I think Vice Mayor Tryon said it best. A nexus and services are one thing, but what we have to do is make sure that we're focused on the task at hand in the sense that we want to give legitimate reasons why this would negatively impact our community. So just having said that, there's more to come. There's going to be an opportunity for folks to give public comment and ask questions at this community meeting. So I would encourage anyone that is interested to attend that. And I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have any at this time.
Any questions? I think you did good, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And I want to
Thank you.
thank the public for those that have come and asked questions. It's been very civil. This can be an emotional situation. And everybody's been very civil with their questions and their comments and stuff like that. And that's paradise. We don't get crazy and emotional. We just address it and handle it properly. So thank you for that, to those of you that asked about it. All right, we have a motion and a second.
yes, motion by Culleton, seconded by Crowder. Roll call vote. Councilmember Crowder.
Aye.
Councilmember Culleton.
Aye.
Councilmember Lassonde.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Tryon.
Aye.
And Mayor Boland.
Aye. Okay, unanimous. And then we're going to consider the sponsorship of legislative bill AB 556 related to property taxation post-campfire.
Yep, thank you, Mayor and Council. Recently, we discovered that there is a item in the law that states that if you don't either transfer your property tax base or build a new home on your existing property after a disaster, within 5 years, that opportunity expires. And so after November 8th of 2023, that would be the 5-year anniversary at that point. And anybody that has not made a decision or is looking to rebuild but doesn't have the funds to do it at this point in time, if they were to go back and rebuild, they would be assessed at the fair market value. They would not be able to hold their property tax base as of the fire base. This was brought up, and Assembly Member Gallagher caught this actually really for us, and has authored a bill to extend this for, I believe, another 5 years. What we have an opportunity to do is actually sponsor this bill, which gives the town a lot of credibility behind this bill, and it kind of puts a name to a face to the bill, which is going to support us. So with that, the legislation is AB 553 or 556, and Braden is actually here from Assemblymember Gallagher's office. And so what we're looking for is an authorization for the town to be a sponsor for this bill.
Okay. Any questions on this? Any public comments? Yes, come, you have to come on up to the, state your name, please, and
Carrie Max.
wait till you get up. What's your name?
Carrie Max.
Thank you.
Hi. So what is the process with that? So you said it's up for something to vote on or something?
So it's
The process, sorry.
yeah. So there's an author to the bill, which Assemblymember Gallagher will be the author of the bill, and then it will have to go through all of the committees to get through that to get to the floor for a vote.
So it's state
How
legislative.
long is that? What does that look like? Will it happen before November?
Lord only knows.
Look towards late August to know final if it's going to pass or not, and it'll be signed around that time, late August. So it'll be moving through the committees, March and April to May, and then September and August. So
That sounds awesome.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering, like, the process of that for people like us that
Sure.
have not had the opportunity to build yet. And do you need us to write or sign a petition or anything?
So
Let us
there'll
know that.
be opportunities for you to support. I don't think that we're at that position yet for supporting letters, and Assemblymember Gallagher's office is really good about keeping us informed about if this is just a real bipartisan type of support, that it's just moving through a lot of consent calendar type of actions, or if there's going to be a hearing, he'll let us know. We'll get that information out to the public so the public can then voice their opinion on the hearing.
What does bipartisan mean?
Means both sides of the aisle,
Both sides.
Republican and Democrat.
Thank you.
It's been so rare.
Yeah, we forgot what that is. The good thing is government works slow. The bad thing is government works slow. So there's a double head on that one. Okay, bring it back to count. Anybody else have anything to say out there in the public? Okay, not seeing anybody. Back to council. What's your wishes?
Well, since I rebuilt my home and they raised my property tax, I'll make a motion that we sign this letter, write this letter, do whatever we're gonna do. Sponsor the bill. That's what we're gonna do.
I second it.
Motion by Colleton, seconded by
Who wants it?
Go ahead.
Ron.
Lassonde. Roll call vote. Councilmember Crowder.
Aye.
Councilmember Colleton.
Aye.
Councilmember Lassonde.
Aye.
Councilmember Tryon.
Aye.
And Mayor Boland.
Aye.
Motion
Okay,
passed.
thank you. Now we can get back to the agenda that we had. Proclamation recognizing Senator Dianne Feinstein, Senator Alex Padilla, and Congressman Doug LaMalfa for their assistance in securing funding for the Row Road project. I've asked Vice Mayor to read this is it in your thing? It is not. Okay, yeah, I'll give you that, and you can hand it to me. She'll read it, and I will hand it to you.
Whereas in response to the Whereas in response to the campfire, which commenced on the 8th day of November 2018, the town of Paradise initiated the Row Road Extension Project. Phase 1, which introduces the concept of an individual cross-town connection between Skyway and Pence Roads, and whereas the Row Road Extension Project creates a new access points for first responders and provides additional routes for a network of residential streets in the event of evacuation and need for traffic control. And whereas the project directly relieves the evacuation corridors which experience a high concentration of traffic-related fatalities during the campfire, and whereas Congressman Doug LaMalfa, Dianne Feinstein, and Senator, what's that? and Senator Alex Padilla. Recognize the need and benefits to public safety in the town of Paradise and requested funding for the project. And whereas Congressman Congressman Lamoff's, Senator Dianne Feinstein, and Senator Alex Padilla's office efforts brought awareness to the vital importance of Row Road project development within the town. Now therefore, Greg Bolin, Mayor of the Town of Paradise, commended the above-mentioned legislators for their contribution to the betterment of the Town of Paradise and recognizing the urgent needs of the community. In witness thereof, he has thereon to set his hand and cause the official seal of the Town of Paradise to be affixed hereto this 14th day of February, 2023.
Thank you. And Terry DuBose is here for Congressman Lamoff. And we also have proclamation for Alliance Workforce Development. Do we have someone here for that? Okay, great, good. So, would you mind reading that? And I will go and do that. So this is Workforce Development.
Town of Paradise, California proclamation, whereas the Alliance for Workforce Development, AFWD, partners with agencies to provide core services focused on meeting the needs of job seekers and employers. And whereas AFWD has supported the Town of Paradise for the last 3.5 years through assistance with the cleanup of public right-of-ways, drainage, downed trees, and numerous other projects to help with recovery of the town. And whereas AFWD provided the town with motivated and energetic candidates to be part of the town that assisted in making Paradise a safer and more beautiful community. And whereas through their time in Paradise, AFWD workers received valuable experience and training which will help them in their future career goals. And whereas AFWD's contribution to the recovery of the Town of Paradise met the vital needs of the community without which recovery to its present extent would not have been possible. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Town Council of the Town of Paradise hereby recognizes the significant, recognizes the significant contributions by AFWD in the Town of Paradise, and be it further resolved that the Town Council calls upon the residents of the Town of Paradise to acknowledge and express their appreciation for the dedication and service demonstrated by the partnership and individuals of AFWD. And witness thereof, Mayor Bolin set his hand and caused the official seal of the Town of Paradise to be affixed hereto this 14th day of February, 2023.
You wouldn't mind coming up? Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys. You
Yeah.
guys did a tremendous amount of work.
Labor of love.
Well, thank you. Would any of you like to say anything? If you don't, that's all right.
It's just,
Okay.
it's the best job ever, just trying to get the community businesses up and running again. It's the best feeling ever, helping the community, the businesses, job seekers. It's just I love Paradise.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
They were a big help in us coming back, so thank you so much. Okay, And now we have special recognition is awarded to sworn and non-sworn police personnel and volunteers for their exemplary contribution to the department. Chief?
Thank you again, and if you don't mind, I'm going to turn my back to you while I read about these folks.
That's good.
And I recognize many faces here of support, so thank you all for being here to support our Of the Year recipients. And I know that about 2/3 of our, folks are going to leave after this, so we'll try not to take up too much of your time. So first, I want to recognize Officer Derek Archuleta, if you'll come on up. I've got to show you off up here while I talk about you. So Derek was born in Chico, raised in Gridley. He recently returned to living in the Chico area. And before working for the town, he was a mechanic for many years for Chico Motorsports. And after 12 plus years, he decided that he was tired of fighting engines and bikes and wanted to fight crime. So Derek applied, and we hired him and sponsored him through the 145th Academy. That started in January of 2020. And after graduating in June, he hit the ground running in his field training program and has just not stopped impressing us with just being exceptional and learning and leading by example and taking on challenges and really making it a personal goal to serve our community by going after the things that matter most to quality of life. So, having said that, through Derek's performance in just the short 2+ years that he's been with us, he was recently selected to be a field training officer and a defensive tactics and baton instructor. Late last year, we sent him to field training officer school and baton instructor training, and he's really looking forward to being able to have the opportunity to train our new officers coming into the police force. Derek's extremely focused. He routinely completes all his reports and tasks in a timely manner. He is extremely proactive and constantly looking for ways to help the community, from community outreach and speaking with youth to having a great eye detecting criminal activity and making arrests. Derek cares about our community and puts in a significant amount of effort into everything he does. His supervisors describe him as easy to manage and someone you always want on your team. So all around, Derek's an outstanding example of everything that we want in a police officer, and we appreciate all that he does. So congratulations on being selected Officer of the Year. And also we have representatives, hang on there, buddy.
You're not done yet. You're not done yet.
We have representatives from Assemblyman Gallagher and Congressman Malfa's office to also present you with a certificate of recognition.
Hard to hold off. Need help?
All right, thank you, congratulations. All right, our 2022 Civilian Employee of the Year is Jeanette Huggins. So a little bit about Jeanette. She moved to Paradise with her family when she was 13, and she went through school and graduated from Paradise High School. And that's right, another one. She left the area for a while to attend William Jessup University in Rockland, where she graduated with a bachelor's in psychology. In her senior year, she married her husband Tanner, and shortly after graduating and getting married, she moved back to Butte County and applied with Paradise to be a dispatcher. We hired her in May of 2016, and from day one being a dispatcher, she strived to constantly go above and beyond and always wanted to do her best. In 2017, she was recognized for her hard work as Dispatcher of the Year. In August of 2018, she was appointed a Communications Training Officer, and in June of 2019, she was promoted to the Records and Dispatch Supervisor. As a supervisor, Jeanette has accomplished many projects. She's implemented new reporting procedures that our lovely DOJ is required for all California agencies. And even though some of those are monumental tasks, she has never complained about it and just done a fantastic job of ironing out all the details and the rough road to get us in compliance with where we need to be. And so I talked about that. Some of the recent tasks is our council gave us direction to re-implement our dispatch center, and so there's been a lot of moving pieces to that. And Jeanette's been involved in the recruitment and selection process for potential applicants, as well as kind of monitoring and guiding our revamping and remodeling of our dispatch center. So again, Jeanette, I want to recognize you for your outstanding achievements and work, and congratulations on being selected as Civilian Employee of the Year. Same thing. Certificates of,
Congratulations.
all right, and our 22 volunteer, our police volunteer of the year is Frank Dodini. Frank, come on up. So Frank's been a volunteer with the police department since May of 2016 and is assigned to our patrol unit of the volunteers. So he's out in the field assisting and handling many different tasks. Once a week, he has an assigned shift that he'll kind of run some errands for us, whether it be mail to town hall in the police department, or him and his partner will deploy the radar trailer that you see in various locations around town, and they conduct vacation home checks and assist our patrol teams with traffic control or disaster assistance. When we have parades or big events, Frank's one of the first ones to volunteer his time to help set up Johnny Appleseed Days, Gold Nugget Days, or any other event where he can lend a hand with coordinating and organizing our volunteers to assist. Frank has also assisted with the training of our new volunteers in this past year. He always picks up the phone and is a very reliable and resourceful volunteer. Frank is described as being very kind and friendly to everyone he encounters, inside and outside the department. He's very involved in our community, and we're lucky to have such a committed volunteer like Frank. Congratulations. And a couple more certificates.
Do you want to do a photo?
We should. We missed Jeanette. You guys want to do another?
Yeah, let's do photo.
Congratulations. Yeah.
Do you want a photo of the board? Good. Hold on one more time. Thank you.
All right, excellent. Thank you. All right, this is our last person that we're going to recognize that is somebody that works behind the scenes, but this group does a tremendous amount of work to support our animal control operations, and that is the Paradise Animal Shelter Helpers group. And this year, we're recognizing Richard Abbott. So Richard spends a minimum of 1 day a week with socializing our dogs in the exercise yard, which is really a big help in their successful adoption process. And when he spends the time with them and socializes them, it makes them more comfortable and responsive to the folks looking to adopt them and to get along with the other animals in the shelter. He can be counted on. His dedication and commitment has been noticed by the animal shelter staff as well as his peers in the PASH Board of Directors. Richard, thank you for your support to the department. We appreciate everything that you do to support our mission, and I want you to take pride in receiving this award because you've earned it.
Thank you.
one more photo up over here.
Thank you.
That's his happy face.
Thank you.
Thank you for allowing the
Thank
time
you.
for us to recognize these folks.
There are a few things that are highlights for the council, and this is one of them for me. This is great, so.
Excellent.
Thank you all for all you do, and even if you didn't come up, we appreciate you guys more than you know, so thank you. Okay, unfortunately, we got to move on. 1H, campfire recovery updates. We have, first off, Colette Curtis, Recovery and Economic Development Director. Any questions, anything you want to? Hang on, wait a second till everybody. There's a big
I'll wait a
movement right
moment for
now.
the crowd to clear. I'm shocked. They don't want to hear the update. Thank you. Okay, I think,
What's that? Yeah.
well, good evening,
Okay.
council. Good evening, Mayor and council. Thank you. Thank you for the question, Councilmember Tryon, excuse me, Vice Mayor Tryon. So I understand that you are interested in an update on the progress of the request we are making through Cal OES and FEMA for a reimbursement for a project related to trees. So for a very brief background, we are working through, okay. I don't know. Okay, I'll really yell. So we are working with Cal OES and FEMA on a paperwork process to get a reimbursement for a project related to trees. And we understand, as of the last meeting, as I updated to you, that FEMA has written a response, but it has not been approved by leadership yet in FEMA. So we are awaiting their approval, at which point they will share it with us. So we have not received that information yet. We are still waiting. Thank you. You're welcome.
Any other questions for Colette? Seeing none, move on to Mark Maddox, Public Works Director, Town Engineer. Any questions for him? Don't make it that easy on him, come on. Tony Lindsay, CDD, Building and Code Enforcement. Any questions, thoughts? Seeing none? Too easy. Kate Anderson, Business and Housing Manager. Questions? Seeing none? Okay, thank you. And thank you guys for your time and those updates. They are very helpful. That does help us a lot. All right, consent calendar. What's the wish of the council there?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
There was no cards to this?
I had no cards on this item.
Okay, roll call, please.
Motion by Crowder, seconded by Lassonde. Roll call vote. Councilmember Crowder.
Aye.
Councilmember Culleton.
Aye.
Councilmember Lassonde.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Tryon.
Aye.
And Mayor Boland.
Aye. All right, public communication. This is an opportunity for anybody that wants to speak to any item that's not on the agenda. You have 3 minutes to say what you want to say, and we can't act on it. We can ask questions, just like that, but we can't act on it. So anybody, we have any cards on this first? Okay.
I do, yes. The first card is from Steven Vasquez.
Okay.
Hello, Council. I don't usually get up and I like to have my anonymity a lot of times. I have a piece of property in Paradise that someday I'll build on. Right now it's financially, I'm waiting for, the rest maybe of the fire payment and all that. So the taxes, I'm kind of glad that they're going to extend that. That'd be kind of nice, but if they don't, I'll still build. but I want to build on my time. And what I have, the issue is I have a fifth wheel on there. I didn't get a shed on time, the free shed, so I got a deal on a fifth wheel, very nice, clean fifth wheel. I stuck it on the property, and then last year or a year before, somebody, an inspector, must have really got out of his way to go see that thing, which is tucked away, it's all fine. And I keep my shovels, my picks, my weed eaters, everything. So when I come from Shasta County, where I live now, and I take care of that property, put it back in there, lock it up and go. And I have that place manicured. Recently, I had to fight to keep it on there, paid the $100 because I had to run the papers late. And then I had the fire guys come up, and the fire head man looked, this is nice. I go, I keep it like this. It's more manicured than most. And the weeds go that high at the most at this property. And I would like to know if there's any kind of change for someone like me that I still pay taxes on this property. I'm going to keep the property. My sons grew up. I was from the Bay Area originally, moved up here in the 90s, and it's just something I want to keep until I decide what I want to do. But my thing is, just in a nutshell, I want to know, can I keep it there without being harassed, bothered, or all that?
Like I said, we can't act on anything. We can listen to you, and
I can give you address to keep my anonymity. The only gentleman here is I met Steve Woody once in a while, but you know.
You can get with Tony in the back. He's part of the code enforcement, and he's in the red back there.
Okay.
And get with him on it. So.
Okay, and that's it, you know?
Okay. Thank you.
I commend you for
Thanks
keeping
for
this
coming.
town going.
Thank you. Thank you.
The next card is from Carrie Max.
Carrie Max, in case you wanted to know again. I have 3 minutes, huh? Okay. Hi, everybody. I got another letter from you guys about having to, important information, second notice, RV temporary use permit is running out April 30th, 2023. I can't live there anymore. I haven't received any money from PG&E or insurance. I'm in court, yada, yada. Anyway, and I wouldn't have said anything, but you guys did, again, said something to me. And I had my lawyer call you guys, send a letter to you guys, what's up with me. And I also learned there's 186 of us, that's it. That's all that's left out of, how many thousands of people lived here? There's some of us that are not out of our nook and cranny yet. And I'd like to see some help coming from your way instead of these. And it said, we want to hear from you. If you're under contract with a builder, or please let us know if you have property title issues. Please let us know if you have not received your determination. I am all three of these. When I called you, no one answered. The day that you served us, you should have had people sitting by the phone because we definitely wanted to talk. And so, like I said, it's 186 of us, and then I also learned 256 got served in Magalia outside of Paradise. Action News called me, and I spoke to them, because it's news. It's something that needs to be dealt with. Yes, you gave me my first one in September. I still haven't heard, you guys even caring to work with me. You had me call, you had me tell you my stuff, but when I did finally get through to somebody, it was a secretary that said, I'll get this to, I said, who? Oh, the right person. Who's that? I've been here 50 years, hit 50 years in December. My family was here. I'm not feeling, 4 years since the fire, I'm still in a trailer. I'm still not knowing which direction I'm gonna go. And my town is making it even harder because I'm already terrified and don't know what to do. And is that my time? Oh, sorry. I wasn't even gonna talk tonight, but I just felt like I should say something. And it's 186 of us. We'd all fit in this one room. How about the town calls all of us in and talks to us about a plan or let me feel like you care. The end for now.
All right, thank you. We do care, and Kate Anderson, she was here just earlier, she'd be a good one for you to talk to, and I think there's information on there for people to talk to on that letter on the backside, but, again, Tony can talk to you in the back in the red shirt back there.
Do I still have any minutes left or seconds? 5 seconds. I'm in court. I'm dealing with everything I possibly can. I'm just
Okay.
stuck right now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right,
Doing my part.
yes.
Next card is from Ward Gabriel.
Before I start, Madam Timekeeper, I read Doug LaMalfa's newsletter, and I want to shake the hand who was the voice of paradise
Thank you,
back
yes.
in Washington. Thank you, sir, for doing that.
Thank you.
We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Now you can start the clock. As you know, I'm a member of the Paradise Garden Club. Besides that, I'm also on the board of directors of the State Garden Club and a committee chairman there. And I am often asked to either provide the invocation or the inspiration. So I read one from this little book written in 1904, As a Man Thinketh, So He Behaves. And then I was asked afterwards, can I get a copy of that? I want to read that to my school board. Somebody else said, can I get a copy of that? I want to take that to my county super. And I thought, I've never read it here. You are buffeted by circumstances so long as you believe yourself to be a creature affected by outside conditions. But when you realize that you are a creative power and that you may command the hidden soil and seeds, say the garden connection here, of your being, out of which your circumstances grow, then you become the rightful master of yourself. My mind may be likened to a garden which may be intelligently cultivated or allowed to run wild. But whether cultivated or neglected, it must and will bring forth. If no useful seeds are put into it, then an abundance of useless weed seeds will fall therein and will continue to produce their kind. Now the connection. Just as gardeners cultivate their plots, keeping them free from weeds and growing the flowers and fruits they desire, so may you tend the garden of your mind, weeding out all the wrong, useless, and impure thoughts and cultivating toward perfection the flowers and fruits of right, useful, and pure thoughts. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ward. All right, anybody else? Seeing none, bring it back. We have no public hearing tonight, so we have 6A, council consideration. Review the update federal advocacy platform and provide comment to staff.
Councilmember, or Mayor Bullen, I believe did you bring the 6H to the top of the agenda?
Oh. Yes, I did.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
You're good. Thank you. So 6H, you're right, thank you. Provide direction regarding the future spending of transit occupancy tax revenues, otherwise known as TOT tax.
Mr. Mayor, I have to recuse myself from this because I'm on the board of directors of PPAC and also employed by them.
Okay. Thank you.
Good evening
Yes.
again, Mayor and Council. I am going to speak with you tonight, after I turn off this. There we go. Okay. I'm speaking to you tonight about some options that were asked by your body here to come forward with options for how to allocate the transient occupancy tax, or TOT, into the future. I will be going over this presentation tonight, but also Ross Gilb is here to answer any questions about the financial impact as well, since this is a largely financial decision. So first, a little background. TOT funds are intended to be used by local jurisdictions to offset impacts of short-term stays in the community. The genesis of this tax is, again, to offset those items. And also, what we have done here historically is use these funds to increase tourism as well. And so for per our PMC. As you can see here, our current TOT rate is 10%. And the town expects to receive about $200,000 in TOT revenue for the 2022-23 fiscal year. That is based on some projections based on our previous receipts from these funds prior to the fire as well as post-fire. Currently, all of those funds are maintained in the general fund, which has been our practice since 2009-10. Prior to that year, the town allocated 50% of the TOT revenue to 3 outside agencies. So 50%, so of that 50%, 50% of that was allocated to the Paradise Ridge Chamber of Commerce, 25% was allocated to the Gold Nugget Museum, and 25% was allocated to the Paradise Performing Arts Center. Now, while this happened before my time here, so I cannot speak to it personally, I do know that this was done in an effort to bolster those organizations and assist them in their tourism increasing activities. They were chosen because they host events or provide activities that bring individuals into Paradise for tourism to spend the night, hopefully in these short-term stays, and in turn generate more TOT, and also spend money in our businesses, and hopefully people will decide to move here as well. It's a beautiful place. Tourism can be very helpful for a community. Council did ask staff to bring some options about how we can look at these funds into the future, whether we want to keep them in the general fund as we have since 2009-10, or if we want to go back to the model that we used prior to that and fund some organizations to increase tourism. So there are some options that are laid out in the agenda summary, so I'll talk with them about those very briefly. The first is a direct allocation to community groups. So that would really follow what we did again prior to 2009-10, where you choose the community groups and provide a direct allocation to them. Whether you follow the path that was laid out before with the same 50% and then allocating it from there, or if you choose a different percentage. The second option would be an allocation based on request by community groups. This would be almost like a grant application where community groups could apply for funding. Through this application process, which would be further designed by council and staff, those community groups would need to show their ability to increase tourism and what those funds would be used for. And then there would be a committee established that would have 2 council members in addition to staff to go through those applications, choose those organizations that would be awarded the funding, and then proceed to award those funds. That could be done on a yearly basis at budget time. And then there's a third option, which is kind of a hybrid of these, which would be to allocate funding to another agency or community group that would then distribute from there, so as a subrecipient. So then it would take away a little bit of the work of kind of going through applications and that kind of thing, but would have some of the parts of option 2. So those are the options that we have identified for council to consider. And then I want to talk a little bit about the financial impact of what this looks like. Again, we are expecting about $200,000 in revenue from this TOT this year. The current fiscal sustainability model assumes 100% of that, of course, going to the general fund, as that was what was budgeted. And if there's any change to that, that will change how that fiscal sustainability model looks. And so I wanted to ask Ross if he has anything he wanted to add specifically in that area. And then, of course, if council has any questions, both Ross and I would be happy to answer them.
Good evening. So just to add a little bit more information on the fiscal sustainability model that Colette just mentioned. So currently we project our revenues and expenses forward really based on our current budget with some other factors in that. Currently, the ending PG&E fund balance that we're projecting at the end of the 25-year period is $62.4 million. So just to have that number in mind, if any of these TOT revenues were to be allocated outside of the general fund purpose, which they're currently used for, that would reduce that $62.4 million balance based on whatever portion is allocated away from the general fund purpose.
So the reason this is before us is because we talked about, and why can't I think of what was it we were talking about? It was the stayovers at homes, what is that?
The Airbnbs.
Airbnbs, man, I could not think of that. Airbnb and that type of stuff, and if we're going to level the playing field with those in motels, we said, you know, we'd like to have this discussion, so that's what brought this and prompted this, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Any questions of them? Any thoughts?
Yeah, I would say that, you know, in looking through our possible ways that we can do this, I would like to see it possibly go back to take 50% of it, 50% of that go to the chamber, and then I think the remaining 50% would be, or the quarter, however you want to look at it, would be divided, which it was divided between the Performing Arts Center, Gold Nugget, but the one organization that's left out is Theater on the Ridge. So I'm wondering if maybe we shouldn't also add them in too. So it would be, of the 50% of that would go to the chamber, and then, you know, the remainder, a third of it would go to the Performing Arts Center, a third to Gold Nugget, and a third to Theater on the Ridge, just as a thought.
And not to dilute this any further, I had a call today with Andrew Coolidge, the mayor of Chico. He called that Chico is very close to signing a airline onto Chico's airport. What he is going to be doing is he's going to go to every city and town in Butte County and ask for support, because they're going to have to be guaranteed a $3 million gate receipt for 5 years. So he's going to be coming at some point to Paradise when they have a signed contract and what have you, and he's going to be asking for support and help. So I don't know if we would look at another avenue, but this is very much TOT related with the airport. So I think that's something else that we need to, you know, perhaps consider adding to this. So that was my conversation with him today, and I told him I would bring it up.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that. Any other questions, thoughts?
Are we up for comments too, besides questions?
Oh, yeah,
Okay.
we are. I
Thank
just
you.
wondered if you guys had any.
Yeah, I have a few. I'm sorry, I have.
You want to wait?
I'll wait till when?
After you want to do it now? Go ahead.
Okay. Number one question I have is, this is supposed to offset impacts that tourists bring here. And so this money is currently going to the general fund. Are we saying that there's enough money in that we don't need all of this to offset the impacts? Have we come back with an assessment saying, okay, we need to cut it by 50%, therefore we're not impacting, the tourists are not impacting the town? Should we not just cut the taxes and reduce the cost of the tourists that come up here? Why do we think that we could pull 50% off now and not have to then draw out of the general fund to offset their impacts?
Well, forgive me if I'm wrong, or you can, that's just a proposal of what we did before.
Right.
We did it before, and we pulled it back because I wasn't here then. I just heard there were reasons. But we also had a very small budget, too. And we were just on a nail's edge of not existing as a town.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very tough times back then, I remember when I joined. But anyway, that's something that, I mean, we can look at that, cutting it. I think that's a pretty consistent TOT tax in the area, and in quite a bit more in big cities, but we can look at that.
Well, I know at the League of California Cities Academy I went to, that you guys told me to go to and paid for it, I talked to a number of folks, and I didn't find anybody that was giving their TOT money out. In fact, they were bragging about how it was helping them with their general fund. Now, it's not a scientific study. I only talked to the people at the dinner table. So, I'm just curious about reducing the general fund by this amount. Are we saying that we don't need all that, that we should give it, there's I understand the benefit, I really do. I like the chamber, I like the PPAC, and by all means, we want the Gold Nugget to come back. So I'm not saying they don't deserve this. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying we're pulling money out of the general fund to allocate it out to others. Are we saying that we don't need that money in the general fund to offset the tourists?
Okay. All right. Any other questions?
Not at this time.
That's it. I have one question. Did we have any reporting mechanism for those agencies that got that money back at that point in time? I know you weren't here then. I wasn't, and I don't remember.
I am not aware of any reporting that was done.
Okay.
Oh,
All right. I think we have some here that will answer that
We do have people here
question.
that were part of
Okay,
that
why don't we
at
open
that
up to the
time.
public to come on up? Anyone, do we have any cards to this? Okay, why don't we do your cards? Yes.
First card is from Kelly Connor.
Good evening. Kelly Connor, I'm the president of the Paradise Performing Arts Center. And first of all, I'd like to thank you guys for bringing this back up again. I was on the Chamber of Commerce board at the time when the downturn of the economy came. And that's when Chuck Rowe approached the Chamber of Commerce and said that they would need to take the TOT dollars and put them back into the general fund. And at that time, it was supporting the Visitors Center on Skyway right across the street here. So what it did is it was 50% of the Chamber of Commerce budget. So it was a major hit, of course, for the people we had employed and the changes that we needed to make to move forward with our new income. So it was a major shift in support in, it was called the Gateway to Paradise, the chamber being right there because it was right as people came into town and they were able to stop in and get information. As far as the Performing Arts Center, I feel very strongly that the Performing Arts Center brings a lot of tourism, and I feel most passionately about the road that we've been down and where we've been and how far we've come. When I came on the board 8 years ago, we had a mortgage of $400,000, and it was our goal to pay down the mortgage and have it completely paid off. And in 2019, we wrote our last check for the mortgage and were able to pay it off. So it is a truly community center. Everything has been paid for by the community. And the things that we bring in and support, such as the Paradise Symphony Orchestra, that is 64 years old, the Northern California Ballet, that has teachings for students who in dance and go on to professional careers. On our agenda right now, we have Inspire School came and checked out the Performing Arts Center, and now they're going to do all their performances up here. So that means when they come up and the Performing Arts Center is full, which is 760 seats, it's all Chico families from the kids that go to school down there. So they're coming up the hill and they're going to see this performance, and they're seeing that Paradise really is, there's stuff happening up here, and they get their eyes on it instead of just hearing things. They're going to do all of their performances at the Performing Arts Center now, just because it's a state-of-the-art facility, and they want to teach their students in a place that's of that type. We have, after Inspire School this month, we have the Symphony, and then Gold Nugget Days, we're bringing in Big Mo. Ansley McLean is coming, Uptown Dance is coming from Chico to put on a performance. And of course, we have the Paradise Community Chorus, the Nutcracker every year, and school programs. So through all of these organizations that come through the Performing Arts Center, I do believe that it brings tourism and it gets people up the hill, especially now, to get their eyes on Paradise and to see what we're doing up here. And I think that's really important.
Good job, thank you.
The next card is from Bill Hartley.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Town Council members. My name is Bill Hartley. I'm president of the Gold Nugget Museum. And I want to thank you, too, for bringing the TOT tax information on, putting it on the agenda tonight so it can be discussed. And we hope that the outcome will be beneficial to many organizations in Paradise. I'd like to address, though, the importance of the TOT tax to the Golden Nugget Museum. For the past 40 years, Golden Nugget Museum has hosted and presented Gold Nugget Days Incorporated, the parade, the Queen Contest. We've also presented the Days of Living History, which are important events to this community that have been celebrated and remembered by many people as they go through the school system and later relocate up here or locate up here and raise their families here. These events have brought many tourists to Paradise, and many of these tourists have stayed overnight in our lodging. The museum promoted these events through billboards and other advertising. That advertising costs money. In the past, before we lost the TOT tax in 2009, that money was used to pay for that advertising that we put out on billboards and everything to bring tourists to Paradise. So very important to us. Historically, we've used that money to balance our budget in terms of our advertising, as I was saying. But I urge you to support the museum with a portion of the TOT tax as it was done in the past. The museum, along with PPAC and the chamber, are brick and mortar establishments that have a long history here in Paradise. And I think that's important to remember that long history and keep us alive and thriving. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
The next card is from Heidi Elick.
Hello, council members. Thank you. My name is Heidi Elick, President of Chamber of Commerce. I'm just going to give you some stats before you get Monica in front of you. ParadiseChamber.com. We have over 33,000 users, over 45,000 sessions, over 87,312 page views, over 12,546 calendar views, 1,357 events posted on our community event calendar. We host Johnny Appleseed Days and Party in the Park, approximately 7,500 attendees, 264 vendor spaces occupied, and many of the vendors stay overnight in the hotels in the local lodging facilities. Community promotion e-blast, the mailing list is 3,607. There's been 343,000 emails sent. The publications, there's over 25,000 Ridge business journals and Ridge Rising guides, visitor and relocation guides, published and distributed. There's the gateway sign. Paradise Ridge Chamber of Commerce served on the committee that recreated the gateway sign on Skyway, welcoming you to the town of Paradise. All it name implies. I personally also would just urge that you keep it and realize what a small deficit to the general fund, half of that money would be, and how important it is. If you want to spend 20 minutes for a lot of fun, go to the chamber and hear what kind of calls Monica fields. It's really entertaining. I tell her all the time she should write a book. But truly, it'd be good use of money and really important for the chamber. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next card is from Monica Nolan.
Good evening, council members, and to reiterate what other folks have said, thank you so much for bringing this back and considering sharing the wealth with us now that you have some. On behalf of our 466 member businesses who have been effectively subsidizing the Visitors Bureau and the Welcome Mat to Paradise for these past 13 years, it is very important to us that we receive these funds back in our coffers so that we can do more than what we've done. We have, in good faith, continued to fulfill the contract that we had pre-2009, I believe it was. We had a contract, which is standard. 8 out of 10 chambers of commerce have a contract with their local municipalities to put out the welcome mat and perform Visitors Bureau functions, funding's on my mind. We've had no hiatus in publication schedule in these past 13 years, despite insurmountable challenge. Our board has always thought it's extremely important for somebody to be telling the story of Paradise and to welcoming visitors. Okay, so Heidi gave you the stats. That was for 2022. Let's see, what else do we want to say? In terms of evaluating options, I think that your best bet is to go with how it was done in the past, because of that it's not a huge amount to distribute. And with all due respect, I do question the ability of staff and an ad hoc committee to evaluate applications. It's a huge fiduciary duty to look at these. I know when every single vendor who comes to an event, I need to make sure that they are licensed, that they have their permits through the state, et cetera, et cetera. I urge you to go with option one, and you have the TOT that the chamber is generating through its efforts to put those heads in the beds and engage in advocacy like return of air service to Chico, et cetera, et cetera. Thank you very much.
Monica, I have a question for you. So, we have a fiduciary responsibility to the town with our funds and all that kind of stuff. And my question before was, and you raised your hand, was how was there an accounting for those funds being used?
There was a formal contract. It should be in your packet. I attached.
I did see that. I just kind of want to get it out there. So
Yeah, absolutely. We had a formal contract it looked like that was actually right before my time, when I was hired right after the chamber lost that funding and our doors were closed. So incrementally over the years, reopened the chamber hour by hour almost. So I did not participate in that contract, but it's always been something on the back burner that we looked at to see what that relationship looked like. And it was something that the town and the chamber collaborated on. And I would like to see something new and different going forward. We've got the standard cookie cutter, your standard Visitors Bureau, things that we did 13 years ago are maybe not as effective for the new Paradise.
a little different now, yes.
Yes.
But there will be some type of accounting of
Absolutely.
those funds.
Yes.
And you don't see a problem with that? I mean,
No.
you think- Okay.
No, absolutely. It's
And the
not,
same with-
how you say, discretionary. It would be tied to expectations and fulfillment. Yes.
Correct.
That was my question, and I liked the contract you sent me, so thank you that we had that. I'm used to seeing deliverables in contracts and all that, and I'm just curious, is that something in the back of your mind with this money, if you were to get it, would there be a schedule of deliverables and that you would report on them on a periodic basis saying,
Yes.
we accomplished this at this time and this was the results, those types of things?
Yes.
Okay, but again, as the mayor said, we owe it to the town to let them know that we took this tax money and we're expending it wisely, and that's the feedback we would need to know that we did spend it wisely.
Yes, and I believe in the previous contract, there were expected deliverables. The only one that we haven't been doing is billboards, and everything else, except for, some of these publications that have gone by the wayside. We're still purchasing ads in regional and state publications, et cetera, and maintaining a presence where we need to in terms of regional tourism.
Okay, thank you. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. And Performing Arts Center and the museum, you're both on board with that type of feeling? Okay. Okay. Yes.
The next card is from Mark Thorpe.
Mark Thorpe, and I have the great opportunity to be the executive director for Gold Nugget Days Incorporated, Gold Nugget Museums, also being a business advocate for the Paradise Ridge Chamber of Commerce. They've come up and they've thanked you for the consideration. I'm going to be a little more forward, and that we relish the opportunity to work with the public sector, speaking from the private sector. This is an investment in tourism. This is an investment in the community that the public sector, that is the town, would not have to take on solely. I'm appealing to the better nature, that is the larger picture of these organizations and all the other future organizations that could benefit from your investment as the town council, representing us as a citizen taxpayer. So I appreciate the fact that you've taken this into consideration. We took it into consideration as the RDA was eliminated. and understood that the town was in hardship and that that would have to be forfeited, which essentially, as you've heard, almost closed down the chamber. The museum has struggled in its publications, it's struggled in its promotion, its advertising, things which I think I absolutely agree that deliverables. There's an important accounting information involved with this, but it can be done. It's not a huge amount, it is very manageable. But both these organizations and the Paradise Performing Arts Center are worthy of a restoration of these funds. Invest in your private sector. We need the relationship with the public sector. We want more. So I'm appealing to you as the town council, please consider its restoration. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anybody else?
That was my last card.
Ward?
Thank you, sir. I didn't get a card in on this. These are needy causes, and I'd like to see 99% of that 200,000 go that way, and it leaves you with 1%, which is $2,000. Give it to the garden club, and we'll plant 10,000 daffodil bulbs instead of 5,000. Thank you.
Nice work.
Again, we have a fiduciary responsibility. We got to look at everything, but we also, there are things that come with tourism that we have police and different things we need to take care of too. So there are those things that happen. So we got to make sure we have those covered. And over time, we might see that changing to where we can give up more, but we'll have to see. So we need to give direction to the staff. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand. Come on up. Yes, please. Thank you. I didn't see that.
Okay, my name is Kathy Dicer. I'm with Paradise Arts Center, Paradise Arts Alliance, and Patch, which is Paradise Arts Theater and Hub.
Okay.
I absolutely support what has gone on in the past. And everybody, again, I like the idea of all of it, you know. However, I hope that when the decision is made, again, you invest in your community. Rising out of the ashes has been the arts and culture groups that have coalesced and come together. There are new groups here now that weren't there before. You've got Theater on the Ridge, who has a lot of stuff going. We're kind of early to the game, or late to the game, as Paradise Arts Center, but we're selling lots of art at Nick's to outside tourists. A real economy, something that they can count on for their jobs and the welfare of the community. We've got a great start in forming an arts and culture destination center. We can make you so much more money than you could ever give us out of the TOT if you just let us all. And so don't discount or take away from any of the arts who are also struggling. Look at your community that's fighting for its existence now with all of us, and look at the groups that are here now, not 20 years ago.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming up. Anybody else before I miss somebody? Okay, not seeing anybody, I'll bring it back to council. So we have to give direction to staff. What's your thoughts? Don't jump all at once.
Mine is a little bit more of a concern than a thought, if I could. In that, I liked basically all four of those presentations and such. I really did. I think they're all worthy efforts. But the concern I had specifically is on one of them, because of California Government Code 1090. It states that we, members of the town, officers, and employees shall not be financially interested in a contract made by them. And that's the reason why we had to have one of our council members recuse himself. And as the chamber mentioned, they entered into a contract. Well, we'd also have to enter into contract with a PPAC, who there's a member. And the second half of 1090 says that an individual shall not aid or abet the town officer or employee in violating subdivision A above. My concern is, I like the PPAC, I like Woody. Would I be perceived as violating my ethics of my office by saying, yeah, let's vote for him and make sure that money goes to PPAC? I did bring this up with Scott. He said that's not an issue. On the other hand, down at the League of California Cities, I had another lawyer say the exact opposite. So I've got like any, if you go to a doctor, you get two different opinions now. Which one do you believe? Well, I'm raising that just as a concern. And that's sort of the reason I mentioned the Citizens Committee concept. If they reviewed all these things and they made a recommendation, sort of like what we have with Measure V, sort of like what we do with the Planning Commission, I'm not saying we're insulated, but they're making the proposal and we're just approving it or disapproving it. Does that separate us enough that we don't violate the ethic part of 1090? I realize that maybe there's no law, it's not a law violation, but I saw that as a potential ethic violation on my part. At least it looked like I might not be above reproach, which is how I try to operate if I push for PPAC because Woody works there. That's my concern.
Well, I'm sure you want to address it. I just want to say something real quick. I know with like the sewer, I can't vote on the sewer, and I'm going to step out here on 6D because PFF, whatever they're called.
Yeah.
FPPC.
FPPC, the Fair
thank you.
Political Practices
Yeah.
Commission.
Anyway, they said I have too much at stake and I can't vote. Well, if the council votes to put it in, does that mean that I get too much? And I don't believe that to be true.
You've got property though, but do you have a sewer building company? So if we couldn't
Well,
contract with you, you'd have a sewer building.
I get it. But
Yeah,
I'm just
that's
saying,
the difference.
there's always, well, I don't, yeah.
At least how I see
Anyway,
it.
we'll let
But I'll
the
defer
attorney.
to our counsel.
Yeah, we'll let the attorney take care of that stuff.
Yeah, there is a slight difference in the examples, because if someone owned a sewer building business, then they would be gaining direct profit from the association, from that contract. In this instance, there's a little bit of a removal. Well, there are two instances that make a difference. One of them, there's a removal between an individual who works for a nonprofit entity who's on staff or gets paid from that entity. And the other one is you've got a nonprofit entity that is providing a public benefit, a designated public benefit. That's why Councilmember Culleton is out of the room, because he is employed by that group. You all would have no direct financial interest, and I can tell you, Government Code 1090 would not apply in that instance. And I know you read the words aiding and abetting and all that stuff. There's no aiding and abetting unless there is some financial transaction that flows back to you directly from that vote. And I'm quite certain that there's not. You all have explained to me there's not, and so I am quite certain, based on my previous interactions in another not too distant locale. I checked with the FPPC regarding contributions to the local Chamber of Commerce and other nonprofits, and there was simply no concern on their part with a similar circumstance. So.
Thank you. I just wanted to get that on the record so I could vote with clear conscience.
Yep, good.
Okay.
And I just kind of want to make a comment. All of these groups are great organizations, and they bring a lot to the town of Paradise. And before I was elected to council, I spent numerous years on the chamber board. And it was after they had lost the TOT, and I can tell you firsthand how hard they worked as a visitors bureau with no compensation for that. And not, putting them in front of anybody else, but just from my personal experience, what I saw, and I do think that we need to do as a council whatever we can to help support these organizations, because they really are very beneficial and helpful, and they bring a lot to the table in Paradise.
Any thoughts? Or you already shared them? Okay, so I thank you all for coming and doing this. We're not going to make a decision tonight. I think, well, we'll see what everybody wants to do, but there's no vote on it. But
Do we give staff any direction?
yeah, we will give that. But let me just say first, I do agree with the statements that, as a town, I'd like to see us invest. I don't like us taxing in this situation and not reinvesting that into people coming and learning about Paradise and coming and visiting Paradise. It just seems like it's a great way to invest. So I am for it. I don't know that I have the ideas of which one should get it, not get it. I think that's something we need to hash out. So direction to staff sounds to me, and you guys can knock this out of the air if you want, that we're gonna move forward with this, and we want to, I think you're saying that you want to also at least look at it with the Chico Municipal Airport also as a part of that.
At least initially, right? I mean, we're not talking about long-term, we're just talking about.
Well, we're talking a 5-year commitment with a one-time donation. And again, it may be something that doesn't even,
If they get the revenue they need, they don't need this money, is that correct? And then we
well,
allocate.
your revenue would be tied up for 5 years. At that point, if it wasn't used, yes, it would come back.
Okay.
But for 5 years, they're guaranteed gate receipts. But they still have more work to do on this, and more information to come to us before we can make a decision. I'm just saying that
Yeah.
it needs to be out there somewhere, that, because if it does truly happen, then they will be coming to us. So that's.
And I would have to see that there's on board by other cities, not just Paradise, yeah. So there'd have to be that's down the road a ways. Yeah, way down the road.
Well, it's
And they
it's
don't
not,
have it, but-
it's, well, if it will happen, if it happens, it's gonna happen within a year.
Within a year, yeah. So it's down the
And-
road a bit, so.
But anyway,
So we can move
yes.
forward. Sounds to me like we can move forward with what we know right now. We can come back with that later, but we can talk about, and have the staff come back to us with some thoughts on this for future vote.
Yeah, if we could get a little more direction, because we did give some ideas, so we actually have 3 different ideas that were laid out for this, which is 1, 2, and 3. If we can get kind of direction of where you're leaning towards, so that gives us more clear of where you would like us to come back with.
So I think, I do like the way it was split prior, and I would like to see some discussion around Paradise or Theater on the Ridge also, and I don't know if there's anyone else in that group. One of the reasons why I would like to only use 50% at this point is we have discussed some town beautification issues, possibly doing some planting to attract monarch butterflies and things like that. So that's why I would like to see that 50% in reserve in case we can use that later. And then we can always reallocate it if there's a special project later down the road.
So if I'm hearing correctly, it's 50% of the TOT would be allocated to organizations.
Correct.
Those organizations would include the chamber,
Correct.
PPAC.
Chamber, BPAC, Gold Nugget Museum, and then also take a look at
Theater on the Ridge.
Theater on the Ridge,
Okay.
switching the words around.
Are we not going to include Patch then? That just had their presentation here. Are we saying that would be off the list?
No,
Okay.
not saying that. Do you want to add those?
I'm just asking the question because I didn't hear them being mentioned when you mentioned the Theater on the Ridge, and they did do a presentation. So my problem is I like them all.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd love to fund them all, but can we?
I think part of it there needs to be a feedback loop too from the people who are getting the money. I mean, so we have some idea of who's drawing what.
Yeah.
You know, like how many people come up for Theater Ridge, how many come up for PPAC, how many come up for these other, you know, I think it's pretty clear what the Chamber of Commerce does for us. I think other organizations, we could still use some help with numbers, so we have an idea there.
Yeah, from my engineering background, I like a return on investment, an ROI factor. We spent X amount of money, we get Y amount of benefit. How is that to be quantified? And I realize we're talking about human beings coming up here and all that, and you can't do the X and Y calculation on it, but that's how my brain goes. And so I'm looking at how, you know, who gets us the most benefit? What's the best bang for the buck, if I can use that military term again? Again, I like them all. I enjoy seeing all the things we're doing, but we have limited finances unless we say, oh, we're going to go to 75% of the TOT because, or what. I know they're saying, okay, I hear you, but we have to be prudent as well. And do we creep up to that? So what are we saying here, Council?
Well, I would like to also throw out there, what if we, as a council, came up with a dollar amount that we keep for whatever we need for our staff and for our police and for everything else. And let's just throw out a number. I'm just going to throw out, we say we need $75,000 for a year to cover whatever issues come up with
The
DOT.
impact from tourists on our police and fire, et cetera.
Right.
Whatever it is, yeah.
And then the remainder would go towards would go towards tourism.
That's basically what we're doing, I mean, it's 200,000. So if
Well-
we keep, if we do 50%, that's 100,000 that we'd be giving to
Right,
the
but
organizations.
right now, we're saying, right, we're saying it's 200,000, we don't, I mean, that's just what it is right now. Right, and that's gonna grow. Do we keep growing, or do we just have an amount that we say we need to keep in the coffer, and the rest of it goes towards tourism? I mean, that's one thing I was kind of wondering, because as that grows, if they're doing their job, and in fact, that is growing, they should be the beneficiary of that.
So that's why if we do it on a percentage basis, then that's calculated in as it grows, they can.
Well, that's true, but so do we. So do we. And do we need it? I mean, maybe we do need it.
And at some point, we may not, but I am just thinking that, I know that we have planting and beautification projects that we have wanted to do.
Yeah.
And we don't have all that laid out yet, so I just want to make sure, because part of it's going to be, you know, when these wonderful organizations bring people up here, what does the town look like? Is it going to look inviting? Is it going to be pleasing to the eye? And a lot of that is just going to be plants and things that we need to bring back that have been burned. So I guess that's sort of where I'm thinking is, you know, we want to make sure we have some of that money to do those plantings down the road too.
Who's we?
The town of Paradise.
Town won't do any planting. We do planting? Well, I mean, our public works does some, right? I mean, they're used to. I don't think we do right now. I don't think we have time to do it right now.
Well, somebody will at some point, I'm sure.
Well, there might be some time before we die that we see a plant here and there.
Maybe they just cut the plants down.
It's not, yeah, Ward will throw some stuff in, but,
He probably
okay.
would if we provided them the plants.
Anyway, for me, again, I would like to have a proposal back that if they do their job, if they're bringing in people, they're the beneficiary of that rise. They see more money coming their direction because of that. Now, they got to account for it and everything else, so I think there's got to be a benefit analysis. And you say, you're right, it's a percentage thing, I get it. But it could be more if we just said, all right, Paradise needs X, that's enough to take care of our issues, the rest of it would go towards tourism. So just a thought, I'm just throwing it out there. To me, there's got to be an incentive. If you're going to do all that work, I want to see an incentive for what I do.
Right.
So,
Not be based on percentage.
yeah, less, but yeah, it would be. Yeah.
Did we give you?
We didn't give you any direction at all, did we?
Okay, so are we agreeing at 50% for now and have it divided between the organizations that have presented here tonight?
And I know we need more information, but I do think that if they come with more information and specifics, we do need to leave a place to contribute. As Chico's going to go to every town, like I said, every city, and look for support. And so whether in the TOT or elsewhere, I'd like to at least have them mentioned, so when they come here, then with all the information we can consider, rather than just lock everything down right now.
Yeah, we're not locking anything down. They're going to bring back information to us. We're not going to vote on it tonight. We're just going to say, bring us back a proposal, correct?
Yeah.
So
we can add later.
yes, we can.
And we may be able to find grant funding for that.
There might be something for that, yeah. That was no direction at all, so.
Okay, so, how about this?
You're
How about-
saying 50/50, and I'm just saying, I think it should be more than that, but bring
Okay.
back those two proposals.
Okay, so what we're going to bring back is a fixed amount held back for the town with excess given to the organizations. We then will bring back a proposal that shows a percentage split, with that percentage split between multiple organizations associated with that. I just want to make sure that the organizations that we're looking at are Chamber, Theater on the Ridge, PPAC, Gold Nugget Museum, I'm missing one. Patch. Is there any other ones that you would like to throw in there at this point?
Well, I'm going to go back to, I mean, if we're specifically naming, I think the airport needs to be on there as well.
But I want to look at that after they get something. I mean, once they have something, then I want us to look at that, because I do think that does
Like
bring
you,
something.
like you said, we're not voting on it,
Right.
but we're making
Right.
the roadway now.
So,
And-
so we'll touch on airport. Contracts with each one of the organizations is a requirement, correct?
Some type of feedback and how many people, so we have an idea.
And reporting, some type of reporting on the funds and how they've been spent.
Tied to the deliverables that they state in the contract that they're going to give to us. We want to see their progress towards those deliverables and what the impact is on the tourism in some fashion, if they can get some sort of way of measuring their improvement.
Some type of report back that shows how these have benefited the tourism back into it. Good?
Clear as
Okay.
mud?
Yep, sounds good.
Clear as
Thank you.
mud, okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay, do we want to bring Woody back in?
Yeah.
Fell asleep probably.
And council members, just as an FYI, I think many of you know this, but I'm actually an aviation law expert. It's one of my expertise. I represent Monterey Airport and San Bernardino Airport. I can tell you more than you ever wanted to know about these startup contracts with airlines. Again, food for thought for another day, but just what I've heard so far tells me an awful lot about the scenario with SkyWest that they're looking at Chico. I can tell you quite a bit about.
And it's going to be a bigger ask than 200,000.
Well,
Not to Paradise it isn't.
But, and again, here's the thing, it's all based on, the actual number may be zero, because if they have the traffic to back it up, and it's gonna be dependent on pairing it with the right city. And again, I'm not one of these, what they call routes individuals. I think if they pair it with San Francisco, I think it's gonna be a disaster. They need to pair it with like Los Angeles or some other.
San Francisco's already out of the equation
Yep.
because of that's what the problem was
Yep.
last time,
Yep.
is the fog, the flights were getting delayed, they couldn't
Well,
support it.
and the problem is, nobody's going to fly from Chico to San Francisco to spend the day in San Francisco. They're going to be going somewhere else. And so they need to recognize that and say, well, where else might they be going to? A lot more of them are going to be going to the LA basin. So, and to the other parts of the world. So you might as well send them off to somewhere like that, where some, that will be their destination, others that will be their transfer point. And so, anyway, we can, that's another conversation for another day, but we can chat about that, because I've got a lot of industry inside knowledge on it.
I'm excited about their possibility, but I don't want to get hung up on
Yep.
not doing anything because of that. So
Yep.
that's the hard part. Okay, 6A. Good morning, Whitty. Good to have you back. Good to have you back. Review the updated federal advocacy platform and provide comment to staff.
Good evening again, Council. Thank you. So to begin this item, I'd like to have Christy Moore from the Ferguson Group give a little background and context for what we're talking about this evening. Christy.
Good evening, Mayor and the council members. Good to see you. I'm actually zooming in from DC, so the backdrop is fake, but I'm actually here in DC. So I wanted to give this quick go over and introduce this agenda item before handing it over to Colette, who's going to go through the platform itself and all the details and be available for questions. But as you know, this is a platform that provides stands and background for the town and communications as well as town staff as we look at different legislative, regulatory issues and projects, and in particular funding for a lot of the town's needs. And so this document will be used, we'll share it with the congressional offices as well as federal agencies as we continue to advocate for your priorities. And also use it as a reference throughout the year to be able to refer back to if legislation comes up that is either we believe would be supported or against or opposed based on the recommendations of the platform. We'd be able to bring those back to the town council and then have you take action on those. But really, it is a driving force in helping to tell that federal story, not just the town recovery, but also where you've been, where you're going, and all the progress that you've made in that capacity. So and also we'll use this as the base for our DC lobbying trip, which we have scheduled for the end of March. So we'll be using this as the main document that we'll be talking from in those meetings. I'm happy here to answer any questions as Colette goes through the document platform, unless you want to ask now.
Any questions of her at this point?
I have a quick question. I get this is the basis. Normally, when you go in, you'll have a specific ask at, so we'll be developing those later, but this formulates our basis of what we're looking at. Is that correct?
I think it was hard to hear, but I think yes, we'll go back. This is the base where we'll have a lot of the decisions that you ask will come specifically for the meetings as they come up and the communications as they come up. But yes, this is kind of a guidance, a guiding document that we'll refer to, and the staff will refer to and bring anything to the council as it's appropriate.
So we'll be pairing these with specific legislation as it approaches.
Yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Great, okay, thank you so much, Christy. So we'll get started now with the presentation. So as Christy just gave really the background on this, we did have a federal advocacy platform that was approved by council in December of 2020. So that came about for all of these reasons, to make sure that council and staff and all of us were speaking from the same book. We wanted to make sure that in every conversation we were having legislatively with our federal agencies, that we were all speaking about the same issues, that we made sure we were all on the same page. So now, years later, we want to make sure that we are looking at this again and updating this to include all of the things that have happened and the things that are most important now, and especially timely for the trip that is coming up. There are many different legislation. Just tonight, we had new legislation coming about that we want to make sure that we're supporting. So we want to make sure that this is up to date as possible. So this platform update, the full platform is in your agenda packet, but I'll just go over fairly briefly the sections and what's in those. So we start out with infrastructure needs, then we go into economic recovery needs, housing and transit, community needs, policy recommendations, and successes. And I want to talk just briefly about the difference kind of between the first four and then policy recommendations. So those first four are really funding needs that the town is looking for in our recovery. So they're really more immediate needs. Policy recommendations tend to be more longer term and items that could help not only the town of Paradise, but other communities that are impacted by disaster. So those are the items that we've learned so much. We want to try to help others as much as possible. So that's where those policy recommendations come in. And then, of course, we want to make sure that we are documenting the successes that we have had along the way and thanking those that have helped us as well, whoever may be looking at this document. So first, infrastructure needs talks about the need for sewer construction funding, evacuation infrastructure funding, and stormwater and drainage system funding. So those are the main sections there. Each of these has quite a bit of information behind them and exactly what we're looking for, as well as an update into where we are within these projects. The idea with all of these is to include as much information there. So if someone were to flip through this document, they would get a really good idea of what we're looking for. But this also would serve as the basis document for us to create talking points, one-sheeters for specific discussions that we are having. Then we go into economic recovery needs. This has been retooled quite a bit to focus on support for an economic development strategy, which we've talked about quite a bit here recently, in moving into the next phase of our recovery and making sure we have a good policy document guiding us in how we take steps to recover economically. We also talk about workforce development and the needs that we have in that area, specifically utilizing CDBG-DR funding. And then also direct business assistance and incentive incentives. I think we can agree that our recent rather small business assistance programs were very successful, and we are interested in finding additional funding to help our businesses as well as to recruit new businesses to town. So that is a major area that we would like to ask for assistance with. Next, we have housing and transit needs. The housing needs really speak for themselves, I think, for all of us here in this room, but we go over specifically that we really need funding for housing development in certain gap areas and talk about what we are looking for there, as well as public transportation needs. Then we look at community needs. In this section, we talk about healthcare. Right now, this section is pretty high level because I know we are still working with our healthcare partners to determine what this will look like into the future. We really wanted to make sure we had this even as a placeholder because this is going to be a major area of legislative advocacy going into the future. We also are looking for support with resident fire mitigation education. That one's been on there from the beginning, something that's really important that we continue to support, as well as wildfire risk reduction buffer. That is that project that's being championed by PRPD, and we are very supportive of that project, and we want to continue to bring that up as much as possible. So then we'll look at the policy recommendations. So these will be very familiar to you, I would imagine. So first and foremost, we have the tax exemption for settlement payments. Of course, you're very familiar with this. We had a support letter here. Councilmember Crowder just traveled to Washington, D.C. in support of this. This is a major item that will be of discussion here until hopefully that is passed. We also have private road designation by FEMA. So this is where private roads are not in consideration for funding through FEMA, through a federal source. That is something we would like to see changed. Disaster zone designation. This is where we would like to see areas impacted by disasters have a designation that would help with financial recovery. So there are what are called opportunity zones throughout the U.S. that are designated based on need. There's an application basis. They're funded by Congress, and they provide certain incentives for businesses to invest there. We would like to see that same sort of designation for disaster-impacted communities, and we want to continue to bring that up as another tool to incentivize businesses and financial recovery for the town of Paradise, but also for other communities that have been impacted by disaster.
Colette, on that disaster
Yes.
zone, are you differentiating between natural disasters and the, like ours was a criminal event that triggered it, as opposed to a natural? It wasn't a lightning strike, it was PG&E that did it. Are you differentiating disaster zones between those two, or is it just general any disaster?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would clarify it as, even though the cause was of natural, exposure, it's still considered a natural disaster under the FEMA declaration. So that's kind of where we were more of looking at it as under that declaration of a natural disaster, that this opportunity come back to the community to allow for tax breaks for businesses to come back into that community to revitalize the economy.
Right. Kevin made a really important point there. What we would be looking for definition is a federally declared disaster. So if it's a federally declared disaster, that is what would trigger, ideally, in our minds, this disaster zone designation. So then post-disaster recovery efficiencies, that as well as the centralized federal funding application really looks at our experience working with Cal OES and FEMA, which have been amazing partner organizations. However, they are not always the most efficient. And so we would love to be able to take what we have learned in those areas and help them create some more efficiencies. So it goes into more detail about what we mean in the document. And then finally, a federal role in permanent housing aid for survivors. So there's not a lot of federal aid for permanent housing solutions. It's really all temporary, and we really think that in wildfires, that's a gap. There really needs to be permanent aid. So that is another policy recommendation that we would make. And then, of course, we go through these successes, and we have so many successes in our recovery. These are very specific to legislative and advocacy successes. And so here we talk about the congressional priority projects. Those are the police radios and the Road Phase 1 funding allocations that we were fortunate to be awarded. Walkable Downtown Project, public safety, the early warning system that has been, that is still coming, but a major success for us. address roadway damage. You can read the rest of these. But these are, ones that we really want to point out to those agencies and lawmakers that we have worked with to say, thank you. We have had success in these areas, and we just want to continue with that. So that is the entirety of the platform, and this is a draft. I want to make that clear. Some of the formatting will change, some of the pictures may change, but really wanted to get input from council on your thoughts about these areas, and if you have very specific language edits, we can talk about that separately, but if there are questions or kind of major content items that you'd like to discuss, I'd be happy to do that now. Thank you.
I have just two, following up on the disaster zone, I think it would be to our advantage to lump them all together as a natural disaster, because that way, people in the east that have tornadoes and hurricanes, they would be more likely to sign on to something like that if their folks were included in it. And then the private road designation, I totally am in support of that because we have so many of our roads in Paradise are private roads. But then how do we slice that in a sense of, so we have private roads and some people were, there were parts that were covered by their insurance for them to repair their roads. Some of it was part of their victim trust settlement, was also to prepare the private roads, or possibly, depending on how it was presented. So how do we split that? Would we do it something like the FEMA cleanup? So FEMA came in and did the cleanup and then, took the insurance part of it, whatever was left over FEMA covered. I mean, what were our sort of down the road thoughts on handling that?
Yeah, and I mean, I'll cover it, is that, it's an open question, right? Because we don't know how they would handle it, but that would be one of our recommendations, is that they've done work on private property before, and technically, private roads are private property. That's how they're designated, and that they've come in and helped with the cleanup, they've helped with trees on private property. And so I would see it that it is, and FEMA's very clear on duplication of benefits. We've ran into many roadblocks. Kate can probably talk till she's blue in the face on duplication of benefits. But if there is a benefit or there is a insurance proceeds that cover that private road, then by all means, those insurance proceeds should go towards that private road before FEMA pays for anything else. But as those are exhausted, we would be asking FEMA to cover that additional cost associated with the disaster, just like they would under the tree program and under the debris removal program. That's kind of how I see it.
Okay.
And I think you're right in the fact it is private property. I mean, most people don't understand that your property is that road that is on your property. They came in and cleaned the property. They came in and did all that work. They destroyed the roads when they did it, which wasn't their fault. I mean, it's no fault to them. I mean, they had to get in and get out with heavy equipment. But then to say, it's not ours, we don't have to worry about it, it's just kind of, it's very weird.
Yeah,
Very
it's
odd.
a missing part to it. And again, I hate to say this, but we're kind of that first of
everything,
our kind, right?
Yeah.
And we're unique in so many ways. And I think that is just one of those missing gaps that, again, we will go back and advocate for. Will it help us? Who knows? Will it help the next? Hopefully, right?
And you're talking about bringing it up to pre-fire standards, not paving all the private roads or anything like that, right? You're talking about just bringing them back to where they were before the FEMA trucks rolled on their roads. Is that correct?
Well, not necessarily. I mean, I'm on a private road, and the fire didn't destroy my road. The FEMA trucks did.
That's what I'm saying.
And I didn't have any insurance to fix my road. Wasn't part of my insurance policy that I know of. Maybe it was. I'm ignorant and didn't know about it. But my point is that if FEMA's work, if the fire didn't destroy the road and it was them that destroyed the road in their cleanup, it should be eligible for funding. Now, agreed, if there's insurance money, if you had other means, so you don't do, but I mean, we're a town, more than half of our roads are private roads. So we are unique in a number of different ways, but that gives us that leverage to
Yeah.
really advocate for that.
That wasn't my question. My question was, to what level are we asking them to bring the road back? And I suggested our.
Mine was paved.
Okay, then it should be brought to pre-fire condition, and if yours was paved, then it should be paved again. But if yours was gravel, for example, it shouldn't be then paved by FEMA.
Correct, yeah, and that's how they would look at
Yeah.
on it, yeah.
But most private, like my private road, a lot of the, and Mark will tell you, a lot of the paved private roads, they were built when there were no road standards. So when you say, you know, I mean, that's where it gets into all kinds of tricky there.
I'm just wondering what path
No,
we're
but
trying to
your
go down.
point's right, yeah, if it's gravel, it should be like for like, but, you know.
Okay. You need direction, right?
This is a draft document, so it's here for comment, and then I will bring back a final version of this at next month's council meeting for approval.
You guys have any comment? I think it's very well done. I don't see anything I would add to it. Do you guys have anything you'd add to this or change?
No, I was thinking public, it looks like we've got, like, our roads covered under the public transportation piece. You're comfortable with that?
Okay,
And staff
Very good.
has reviewed this as well.
Great job.
good job, thank you. Oh, public? Does public have anything to say? Sorry.
Cards?
We're just going along. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right, I'm trying to move this along, so we're not here till midnight. Thank you so much for joining us. It's already 10 o'clock there, so, or no, 11 o'clock. 11 o'clock. Yeah,
Thank you.
sorry.
Thank you, Christy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christie.
All right, 6B, consider concurring with the recommendation of the interview panel. A, appointing applicant Charles Homan to fill the existing vacancy on the planning commission, effective immediately with the term. Or 3, consider an alternate direction.
And so, Mr. Mayor, too, it's Holman, that's my fault on that one.
Holman, H-O-L-M-A-N.
L, yep,
Okay.
thank you.
I'm sorry about that. Is Mr. Holman here?
Yes, I'm right here.
Okay, sorry about that.
Would you like me to answer any questions or anything?
You can come up, yes. If you have any comments or any questions?
Just that I'm just really happy to serve the community if you select me.
Great.
Really looking forward to it. I guess I have to, if so, I hit the ground running next week, right?
Thank you.
Oh, boy.
Okay.
Get ready.
Thank you for being willing to go through the process and take on the.
I'm happy to, and I think I can be of service.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Thanks.
Yeah.
Seeing none, do we have a motion?
I so move.
I'll second.
Motion by Lassonde, seconded by Crowder. Roll call vote. Councilmember Crowder?
Aye.
Councilmember Culleton?
Aye.
Councilmember Lassonde?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Tryon?
Aye.
And Mayor Boland?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot.
You're in. You're stuck now.
If I adjourn at this point?
Just
No,
be
actually, it's a
quieter than
requirement.
everybody
You
else.
have to stay for the entire meeting.
You might want to go out the back door. Yeah, we don't- yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. 6C, consider approving the formation of a public services subcommittee to consider input and requests for public services funding, and 2, appoint 2 council members to the public services subcommittee. Crickets. Oh, hi.
Hi there. Good evening, council. This is a routine item. The town of Paradise has been a HUD entitlement city since 1994. As an entitlement community, we develop our own programs and funding priorities, and HUD determines the amount of each entitlement grant. As part of our CDBG annual plan, the town council may elect to allocate up to 15% of the program year's funding toward public services. The agencies, toward public service agencies. These agencies must be legal nonprofit organizations that provide services to low and moderate income residents. Historically, they've been Boys and Girls Club, Park and Rec, Meals on Wheels, Youth for Change, those types of organizations. In the past, the town council has directed staff to establish a subcommittee consisting of 2 council representatives and 2 staff members to hold preliminary interviews with interested subrecipients. The purposes of this subcommittee is to meet with the subrecipients and then make a formal recommendation to the council for appropriations for those public service funds. There is no impact to the general funds. These are CDBG grant funds. And if we allocate up to the 15%, it should be around $16,000, or this year it was $16,130. So staff is asking you to approve the formation of a public services subcommittee to consider input and request for public service funding, and to approve 2 council members to that public service subcommittee.
Okay, any questions?
What happened to the prior subcommittee? Did it disappear at the end of the year or something like that?
Yeah, they just serve for one year and then they're over with. So we do this every year.
Okay.
Any cards on this?
I have no cards on this item.
Okay. Is there 2 council members that would like to be upon this?
I did it before, I'll do it again.
Speaking of crickets? Okay.
I said I did it.
Okay, yeah, I heard you. Okay.
So I'll do it with Woody, since I'm the junior member on the council. I'm supposed to get all the bad jobs and all the easy work.
It's not a bad job. This is not a bad job.
It's a great job.
Okay, I'll get all the great jobs as
It's a
new
great
person.
job, and I will give you proper guidance.
Okay,
It's a great job. I'm just allowing somebody else to.
that's so kind of you. Thank you so very much.
No, it is cool. We've done it a few times, so.
It is. It's a feel good.
Okay, so we have 2, do we have a motion?
So move that we accept the gracious offer for Ron, Councilman Lasan and Councilman Colton for their time to serve on this committee
And have the subcommittee.
and have a subcommittee
For 1 year.
for 1 year.
There a second? I'll second that.
Motion by Tryon, seconded by Bolin. Roll call vote. Councilmember Crowder?
Aye.
Councilmember Culleton?
Aye.
Councilmember Lassonde?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Tryon?
Aye.
And Mayor Bolin?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, so 6D is having to do with the sewer. I'm going to let you read this, Councilwoman Tryon, and I have to exit at this time because I have a conflicting interest, yes. So they say.
And we're above reproach.
That's right.
Mr. Maddox, it is all you.
All right, good evening, Vice Mayor Tryon and Council. It's my pleasure tonight to present to you the next step in the Paradise Sewer Project, in specific, the intermunicipal agreement for the City of Chico wastewater treatment services to the town of Paradise. So I will kind of expedite this presentation here by sparing us the slides about the project background, overview, objectives, the Sewer Regionalization Project Advisory Committee, which was formed about 2 years ago, and the principles of agreement that were developed by that committee that would help us transition to the intermunicipal agreement. All of that information I mentioned is in the staff report, and I'm certainly glad to answer any questions at the end if you have some additional needs about the context and background for the project. But getting straight into it, following council approval of the principles of agreement by the town of Paradise and City of Chico councils in June of 2022, the Paradise and City staff and legal representation teams prepared and reviewed the proposed intermunicipal agreement for the Paradise Sewer Project. So the IMA overview, it addresses and incorporates all 17 principles of agreement approved by the SERPAC and the subsequent council after extensive reviews by staff and the public. It provides contractual language for wastewater treatment services by the City of Chico to the town of Paradise, and it's also compliant with the Chico Municipal Code Section 154285, regulation of waste received from other jurisdictions. So let's get to it and go through the highlights of the IMA, which is fully in the agenda packet, and I apologize for the numerous amounts of pages. But with that, let's go section by section. I'm going to kind of go over the key highlights here in summary. Section 4 states and is really in relation to all about capacity. The city of Chico, with this section, will provide the town of Paradise to serve our sewer service area, which is primarily along our evacuation corridors, Skyway, Clark, and Pearson. And so the city will provide 0.464 million gallons per day of capacity. That's the full build out of our projected sewer service area. The town will pay normal fees plus a 20% late penalty, or I should say a penalty, in the event of an allocation exceedance. So we are making this commitment that we will not exceed that 0.464 MGD capacity. And when the town reaches our 90% of the 0.464 MGD, that the town will prepare a report which outlines options for maintaining the current cap or increasing the cap subject to reviews and approvals. And then last for this section, the boundaries of the area served under the IMA cannot exceed the boundaries of the town of Paradise jurisdiction. That's one major factor that was a point of contention through the project, and we made a commitment to the communities and the public for this provision to live on through the IMA and in the contract. So that's here actually in several different areas.
Mark, what's the maximum capacity of the pipeline in mega gallons per day?
You know, that's a good question. There's a couple of different pipe sizes, and especially in the transition between Paradise and Chico. So ultimately, I don't have the exact number, but it's more than the 0.464.
It's significantly more or moderately more?
Moderately.
Okay.
Yeah. So, because again, the intent with that is to grow within the sewer service area, and we're not quite sure whether or not we'll have more affordable housing that will have a higher use or, a development of wastewater flows. So if this sewer service area, based on projections and engineering calculations, exceeds what we originally thought would be generated, we want to have at least some options there for additional growth for the town. And again, we'll get into that about renewing later, but it would really kickstart a renewing of the whole process that we just went through to potentially increase the capacity allocated to this.
I'm just expecting a lot of success in the town coming back and a lot of people hooking up to the sewer, and I just wanted to make sure the pipeline's not the limiting factor.
Right, I don't anticipate that being the case.
Okay.
Okay, great. Some highlights for the IMA. Section 5, the town will adopt the city sewer use ordinance and subsequent regulations. Section 6, we will provide all requested information to the city regularly. Section 7, we will grant the city access to all of our facilities as they need it. Section 8, the town will construct a flow control and metering structure with access to city staff for proper monitoring. Part of that means we'll have a flow meter here at the top of the hill and then a flow meter there right before connection, so we can compare and contrast the flows. They should be identical. There could be infiltration and inflows to those pipes. There could be illegal connections, so we certainly want to monitor that and have proper equipment to do so. So Section 8 helps us with that.
Mark, what does Section 7 mean? Town will grant the city access to all facilities. What are those facilities?
Wastewater treatment facilities, or wastewater collection facilities. So if they want to review a pump station or the export pipeline access points, we're certainly going to partner with them and allow access to that infrastructure. Because it really is, while the system, and I'll get into this in Section 10, we will own and operate, this is our collection system. We recognize the nature of wastewater flows and what is generated and transported. They really need certainty and access to these facilities to make sure that it's working properly and delivering the waste in the manner that they are expecting it. And that really is also what the city pre-treatment program is. For example, breweries or different other waste generators have different characteristics in their waste. And so if we have any type of industries like that, they're going to be subject to the pre-treatment requirements that they enforce upon their own residents and commercial operations in the city of Chico.
Does this also mean that they can go on private property and check to see, like the brewery example they have, make sure they're pre-treating it properly?
Well, yeah, so there would be some sort of pre-treatment agreement for that case where I'm sure, just for example, the city has a pre-treatment agreement with the Sierra Nevada Brewing Company, access to their facilities as well.
Okay.
So that would be in partnership with that developer, that operation.
So it's not just town facilities, it's also private facilities that they would have access to with this
For
agreement?
pre-treatment regulations, most likely so, yes.
Okay.
So it also appears that the town of Paradise controls who gets access. So in other words, the city cannot give anyone access to this pipeline. It has to come to the town of Paradise.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. The town of Paradise, we own and operate and maintain. We are required to adopt the pretreatment regulations, and how we enforce that pretreatment regulations is still to be determined, but it will be led by the town of Paradise. Section 11, the city will comparatively continue to own and operate the water pollution control plant off of Chico River Road. So getting into the connection payment. So this item actually came before council and concurrent to the original principles of agreement on how the connection payment was to be negotiated. So with this, we're memorializing that outcome, which was that the town shall pay to the city approximately a $14.9 million connection payment payable in full at the time of initial wastewater flows begin to flow from the core collection area. This amount may be recalculated approximately 6 months prior to the date pursuant to the regionalization planning report that was prepared. And this payment shall be used by the city only for capital costs associated with projects implemented at the water pollution control plant. And again, no flows shall be accepted until the payment is made. And the town at its sole discretion may provide for the recovery of all or a portion of this payment in its sewer rates or sewer connection and capacity charges to our customers.
What would trigger a recalculation?
Say some further changes to the economy, inflation. The estimates for the 14.9 is in December 2026 dollars. But if there's some sort of change in the global economy where that's going to be extremely higher based on what we saw and predicted for December of 2026, that's a case that we would make to recalculate that number. But again, it really shouldn't deviate too much because we try to go forward with a conservative approach to really capture the full cost in that year. So now talking more about fees, the town will be subject to future costs related to the needs of the water pollution control plant proportionately or directly as applicable. And what I mean by that is if the plant needs upgrades to meet new regulations, our residents will be treated the same as their residents in those costs. And what's great about regionalization is the broader the base, the more effective and economies of scale lift those costs. So proportionately for those types of issues, but let's say, and while I can't think of a specific example, but if there was a project or something necessitated at the connection point or directly related to our project, we would be responsible for those project costs as applicable. In addition, we will develop our own capacity and connection charges, again, our own rate structure. And again, we will maintain adequate records and the city will charge the town for supporting that pretreatment program that I mentioned earlier as well. So as far as payments, the IMA states that not later than 45 calendar days following the date of each regular periodic billing for sewer charges, the town shall pay to the city a sum that equals the total of all charges for the city that were charged to the town for that billing period. And the key here is regardless of the amount collected by the town from its users. This is a critical point and one of those items that really was negotiated through the SURPAC, that it makes sense that if the city of Chico is going to extend its services to us, that it does not want a role in collecting late charges. And so we feel that it is a burden that the town of Paradise, as a new utility operating the system and having our own rate collection system or rate structure for our collection system, the operations and maintenance of it, that we will be collecting rates and that the city should be made whole regardless on how much the town is being paid for those charges. And again, that's proportionate to it's not the 0.464, that's a proportionate to the amount of actually the flows being generated. So if to start we only have 300 customers out of the 1,500 parcels in that sewer service area, we're only going to be charged for those 300 customers of the flow that's being generated and received at the water pollution control plant.
Is that going to be something our current finance department's going to be able to do, or we're going to create a whole new sewer department and all of that?
So the broader operations and maintenance impacts of creating this utility is definitely something that's going to be further scoped in our design build portion, or at least our next phase. about transition plan, what are the full impacts, what are the costs, what are the rates gonna be for the individual ratepayer, what's the staffing level look like, and privatizing, or not privatizing, but hiring contract staff or hiring in-house permanent staff.
But that's part of the next phase.
That's part of the next phase that we'll be doing in the pre-construction area, especially after construction funding is secured and we know what that full funding picture looks like. So with that, I'll add the last couple of statements here is that payment shall be accompanied by a summary of identification of billing categories, and we shall submit a semi-annual report to the city reconciling with billings with payments. Now getting to the water pollution control plant monthly fees, in addition to any other user and pretreatment fees, the city shall establish a water pollution control plant treatment fee as a part of its overall city fee structure. Similarly, the town of Paradise users will be charged a water pollution control plant treatment fee in accordance with residential, commercial, and industrial uses, and such fees shall not be higher than the proportional fees collected from the city's ratepayers for the same treatment. The best way I can summarize that is, and you'll see this later, the intent is to ensure with 100% certainty that no user, no entity is subsidizing the other, whether it be Chico to Paradise or Paradise to Chico, is that this shall be treated in an equal manner. So if there are rate increases which the city of Chico recently went through, their increase shall be the same as ours, and one shall not weigh heavier than the other. It establishes procedures for utilizing Prop 218, which we're familiar with as well, for any fee increase processes, whether initiated by the town or passed through to the town by the city. Okay, getting to some of the miscellaneous items to close. Section 15 states no joint and several liability. Scott can probably talk to more about what that exactly means. But Section 16 states the procedures for disputes, mediation, and continuation of work.
Just a real quick.
Yes.
On auditing, section 15, number B, can we also request that we can get an examination of their records as it pertains to our waste coming down, what their records say, so we have a reconciliation process there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's, if I'm understanding you correctly, you're looking for kind of a true up of records to make sure that their books match ours.
Correct.
Okay, that sounds great. I think that's
Thank you.
feedback I can
I
tell.
think it's already in there.
Okay. It probably is.
It is.
Okay.
We get access to their records, they get access to ours.
Okay.
Yeah, certainly audit records are laid out very, very well in the agreement.
And the way B reads, it sounds like they just have access to ours, so maybe there's another section that I didn't see. Okay.
I think the next section is of what we have access to theirs, but we will double check while finishing the presentation.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So again, section 16 is really important. It states the procedures for disputes, mediation, continuation of work. Section 17, provisions for default by the city and the town. 18, requirements for insurance and indemnification. And then last 19 has various provisions for force majeure, emergency notification, other notifications, and modifications to the agreement. Kind of the last and closing one that seems appropriate is about termination. This is definitely a question the city had and something we want a lot of visibility on in the process for approval and execution, is that our commitment is to fully exhaust all measures outlined in section 16 for resolution of disputes. In conformity with this agreement prior to consideration of termination of the agreement. We further agree that if termination of this agreement was required or needs to be explored, terms shall be incorporated within a formal amendment to this agreement pursuant to section 19E, modifications of the agreement. And so what I'll add here is both the town and the city agree that the project represents a significant investment into the region, and as such, termination language is not identified specifically and can be amended later. This approach accounts for termination likely requiring a multi-year process involving likely infeasible outcomes. Parties agree dispute resolution is attainable. Right, so while it's difficult to sign a document that says there's no termination, we're trying to get as close as we can to that. Because again, what we are hopeful for is the town of Paradise and our residents will be considered a customer of the city of Chico. And similarly, if there was an issue that needed to be solved, the city will investigate and take appropriate actions with that's causing that issue, or whether it be a resident or a business or a commercial area, rather than to turn it off, right? Because ultimately the wastewater still needs to be treated and disposed of in a way that is environmentally appropriate. And so this language is something that our staff and legal teams agreed to and are presenting here tonight. So getting into next steps, I did try and commit to a brief presentation. So from here, I should have mentioned earlier that the City of Chico's Council will be considering a similar presentation and request on a week from tonight, on the 21st. And if approved, Chico staff would need to submit an extension of services application to Butte LAFCO, and then if that was approved, the IMA signed would then become effective. And we're hopeful that this could occur as early as April 2023. From there, general project updates, design build, we've secured full funding, $30 million for the design portion, design and right away. We are expecting that to last at least 12 to 18 months before any ground was broken for construction. We're still seeking that construction funding, as was mentioned earlier tonight, but we have this in here. In no case will any of the project costs be borne by the City of Chico for the construction of our projects. And so that's just something we want to remind all parties involved. Next is would come the connection payment. We talked pretty heavily about this and the timing and the requirements of the payment being made before flows being accepted. Construction efforts are expected to begin in 2024 with completion in late 2026 or early 2027. From there, we are excited about housing and flows. So this kind of map kind of outlines the point of Paradise's connection. Here on the x-axis is the wastewater flows, the years, and on the y-axis is the projected flow. And so the City of Chico is in our reporting and projecting for this project has this connection point here in 2027, and it would take a good 30 years for our full 500,000 gallons per day to be fully realized. And this graph really just shows our small little piece of their overall capacity. And as part of the studies and calculation of the payments is to make sure that the city is fully compensated and no capacity is reduced in this process for them. So with that, I went backwards. My kind of last talking points is what we achieved with this agreement, and really a 2-year process to get to this point, is ensuring no connections outside of town limits, establishing that no entity or ratepayer is subsidizing the other, proportionally allows for future water pollution control plant economies of scale. It infuses capital funding to the City of Chico for the town's allocation. It protects the environment by leveraging regional infrastructure, and it directly connects to the water pollution control plant, and definitely acknowledges that affordable housing takes a region, not just a village, and that we maintain a healthy relationship which protects both the city and the town. Again, here it is tonight, our action items recommended for the council to review and approve the IMA. We're asking for the town manager to be authorized to approve minor adjustments to the IMA as requested by the City of Chico during its review and consideration process. And then last, direct staff to continue next steps in the project, including supporting the city in the Butte LAFCO application. And then here, as promised, again, the City of Chico has a similar request next week that we expect that they will take up. And from there, I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have for this evening, and I'll turn it back to Scott.
Yeah, Councilmember Tryon, I searched for the word record in that document, and I did not find a mutual audit requirement of providing documents. So I would suggest 15B, that if you approve of this agreement, that you approve it with the modification that become a reciprocal duty.
Mark,
Are there any other questions?
yeah, when you're down in Chico and doing construction down there, obviously you have to comply with all their rules and work with their schedule and all that. Is that part of this agreement? That, you know, they can't hold us up in connecting by saying, oh, wait a minute, we can't let, just like Almond Street took forever, right? They can't do something, pull something like that and say, oh, you'll have to wait till next construction season before you can do a pipeline in this area?
Oh, well, what's good about the alignment is actually we really almost don't enter the city of Chico city limits. We're definitely in the sphere. We're going to be mostly partnered with Butte County.
Okay.
And the roads, the construction project is along a lot of public roads. And we'll be working with both Butte County and all permitting agencies. Again, that's part of the next step in the design portion. But we're really excited to have great partnerships with the city. And we don't anticipate this being a burden on them or their staff or being delayed based on other factors that we.
The IMA is also written to motivate them for connection, so they aren't getting their capacity fee until that connection has been made and that there's flows flowing. So they're motivated to get that done based on that they're going to get quite a sum of money from us to help with the upgrades to the plant.
Do they have to do an infrastructure upgrade before we can connect, or will they use that money to build after we've connected?
So that's really up to them. I do not know what their plans are specifically, but regular maintenance and I know I showed on one graph in the report for the regionalization study included some urgent needs, one being a fourth clarifier in the wastewater treatment process. So that's something that they were anticipating to need already, but due to the campfire and really the influx in population, they need it sooner. So this connection payment could help pay for that, but it could not. But as far as compatibility for the actual transition chamber for the Town of Paradise project at the city's water pollution control plant, that hasn't been fully designed yet, but we anticipate that to happen in the next, really 12 months.
So your expectation is in 2026 or 2027, when we connect, they're capable of taking the 300 or whatever we have?
Oh, yes.
Right off the bat?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Mark, do we have money to build this thing?
So today, we have $45 million set aside through existing grant funding. So we are currently in an application process for what we are estimating about a $150 million grant through the state for a septic to sewer conversion program.
Yeah.
This program,
The only reason I asked that is to follow on Ron's point
Yeah.
about, is there any way they could delay it? So I love seeing the timeline and all that stuff for completion and hookup, but if we have to be chasing wherever dollars to make it happen, it's
Yeah.
great we have enough to start design.
well, this action item is huge. Certainly having executed agreements or contingent agreements on the project helps us
Leverage.
lock everything down and get it going. We've been working with the state regularly and been working on submittals for this funding application. It provides up to $150,000 per eligible connection, which we are seeing as an eligible connection being primarily residential, or the parcel could potentially be residential or was residential pre-fire. So that's about 1,000 of our 1,500 connections. With that, we're hoping to get in front of the State Water Board, talk about the meaning of this project to our recovery, to the environment, and a solid investment into the future. So that's a big one we're watching, but then again, we're gonna have that gap for the overall project cost. And again, that's where it comes in great for our federal advocacy platform, meeting with legislators at the state and federal levels to talk about this project and get ready to see what we can do about that gap funding.
Go ahead. Any other questions for the council? Go ahead, Woody. If you have one. Okay. Any other questions from the council? Do we have any cards on this issue?
I have no cards on this item.
Okay. No other cards? What is the pleasure of the council?
I move approval with the condition of the addition of the
15B
stipulation
reciprocal bidding.
to reciprocal reviews or
Yes, records of
books.
Reciprocal requirement to provide documents for audit
With that
purposes.
stipulation. That's
Okay,
my motion.
Motion made by Councilman Colton. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Councilman Crowder. Roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Crowder.
Aye.
Councilmember Colleton.
Aye.
Councilmember Lassonde.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Tryon.
Aye.
And Mayor Boland is absent. Motion passes.
And thank you for the thorough report. Okay, so, and he's back.
Well, we're talking about you.
Too many words to say.
Too many words. Okay, thank you. So we're now on 6E, am I right with that?
Correct.
Okay. Upon conclusion of the public discussion of this agenda item, 1, consider establishing a standing committee of the town council entitled Legislative Committee, and appoint 2 members of the council to serve on this committee, including setting policy and priorities of the committee, and 2, provide an alternative directors to the town staff. Okay,
Is that G?
that's E.
It's E.
Oh, okay.
I hope so.
So, Mr. Mayor, I can jump in on this one. At the request of, I believe it was Councilmember Tryon at the last meeting, and with the concurrence of the council, this item was placed on the agenda for the proposal to create a legislative committee. The purpose of the committee would be to track state and federal legislation and any administrative regulations that were being contemplated either by a state or a federal agency that would have an impact on the town. The committee would also be tasked with representing the town before any regulatory or legislative bodies or any individuals elected to those bodies, and to deliver the recommendation of the town council to those either legislative or administrative agencies. This would be, again, for the benefit of the town and its residents. To go back to the discussion about arts before, this is sort of like a blob of clay, and you can mold it into whatever it is you'd like it to look like. But again, legislative advocacy it has proven to be very both important and beneficial to the town, and it would likely be very beneficial and important to the town in the near future and in the distant future as well. So the recommendation has been, if you're going to establish a committee, have 1 or 2 council members on that committee. You can always, there is the ability to get the concurrence of the council as to any specific items that come up. They can track legislation, they can track administrative regulations. Of course, staff will do most of the legwork, but the legislative committee would be really the muscle behind and the mouthpiece behind the town's desires.
Is there a plan to have staff support for that from our town staff? Because it sounds like there's going to be some paperwork involved and things of that nature.
There will be, and initially the town manager will be tasked with the initial coordination of that. Obviously, there will be other staff members as well who will be involved. I would envision, for example, any legislation related to housing the director of housing would be responsible for bringing that to the town manager's attention. Anything related to, accounting, the finance director would handle that. Anything related to legal, I would certainly, mention that to the town manager. So each department head, I think, would be sort of responsible for their own sphere of influence.
I would like to see the committee be the mayor and the vice mayor.
I'd like to actually be on that committee. I've got a really good rapport with our representatives, and it's something I'd really like to do, and I'd like to be one of the representatives.
Is this something that it's going from year to year? I mean, we're going to do this not just 1 year,
Correct.
right?
That's the idea. Remember, as I use the analogy, it's your barbecue, we're just the cooks. If you want it to go from year to year, I think that would be certainly a really good idea to do that. I would envision this thing should go on and on and on and on and on. As long as we have legislators and administrative agencies, I think there's a need for this.
Well, there's also, we have a resolution that says that the mayor is the spokesperson for a lot of things. It is quite lengthy resolution. So I think absolutely the mayor should be one. We pick a mayor annually, and we have staggered terms. So to make it for anything longer than a year, many people have been picked for committees over and over.
Right.
And so the only thing that would change there is whoever, if the mayor changes, then that person would be automatically be at least one of the committee members, you know, so.
So are you proposing a one-year term for this committee? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because, I mean, you know, I mean, if, oftentimes, people will take a committee assignment and they'll do it more than 1 year. Since we change, I mean, the mayor by resolution is supposed to be our spokesperson and a number of things. It says right in there that they interact with all these different things, people and stuff. So by resolution, the mayor should be a member. The mayor has changed every year. It doesn't always, maybe sometimes the mayor, like Steve did, serve a couple of years, but.
But for this committee, you're saying
Yeah, but the
each
committee
person
could,
assigned
it
would be
could just be
for.
an annual appointment, because
There you go.
as we turn over the committee, you know, as our terms are up, I mean, if you made it for 2 years and, you know, whoops, you didn't get reelected, you'd have to pick somebody anyway, so.
Well, I'd be all right, if we're gonna do that, I'd be all right for mayor, vice mayor for your term, because every year that'll turn over.
Yes.
And that'd be something that'd change, so I'd be all right with doing that. Is that something the committee's all right with, or the council's all right with?
I move to make it the mayor and the vice mayor.
All right, I'll second it.
Motion by Tryon. Oh, yeah. Public comment?
Oh, I'm sorry. Any of you two, 1 of 3 or 4, 1 of 2? Thank you, okay, sorry.
Motion by Tryon, seconded by Culleton, to appoint the 2 members of the committee as the mayor and the vice mayor. Roll call vote, Councilmember Crowder?
No.
Councilmember Culleton?
Aye.
Councilmember Lassonde?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Tryon?
Aye.
And Mayor Boland?
Aye. Okay. 6F, consider reviewing the filing of financial information provided by staff concerning fiscal year 2022-23 operating and capital budgets. And I'm not going to read the rest, so. No, I know. Because I'm mayor. That was good.
Yeah, unless you want to. It's really bizarre to watch yourself.
Just throw in the last slide.
Last slide's approved.
So the key here is to make this understandably simple, different than what is on here.
Okay, gotcha. Cool. I will do my best to keep this short and sweet and as digestible as possible. So to kick things off here, I'll actually start with a staffing update that's been included in the mid-year budget review. So this includes the proposal of 2 additional positions, as well as changing the hours to 2 positions that are already approved. So to start with those positions, those new positions, one that is being proposed is an accounting analyst position. This is related to the finance department. As the department has identified a need to assist with the increased workload that we've seen really post-campfire. This position would take on the responsibility of assisting with grant project reconciliations, and would also work with grant administration, so including reimbursement requests and tracking receivables and making sure that those are secured timely. The salary pay plan placement for this position is recommended to be equivalent to that of the currently approved accountant position. So what this translates to is a total annual financial impact, including wages and benefits, of about $96,000. The good news here is that since this position will be supporting a lot of grant administration processes, we're estimating that about 60% of that total impact will be recoverable through the grant projects that this individual will be working on. So that translates to about $58,000 of that total that will be a non-general fund impact, while the remaining 40% or $38,000 would be an additional general fund impact. For the current fiscal year, we would estimate that for the remaining 3 months or so of the fiscal year, that would result in just about an $11,000 impact for this position. The second new position that is being proposed is a summer engineering intern. For the Public Works Department. This position would work full-time, 40 hours per week for about 3 months of the fiscal year annually. So this position would help with soon-to-be outdated engineering and traffic surveys, And we'll also be providing minor support to active construction projects as well. The total financial impact of this position is expected to be about $11,000 annually, so much less because it's just for the 3 months of the fiscal year. In addition to these two newly proposed positions, we're also proposing for the Public Works Administrative Assistant position to increase their hours weekly from 24 to 36 hours. This increase in hours will provide better coverage in the department as well as better support for grant reimbursement processes as well. So again, kind of continuing with that theme to ensure that that grant administration is fully supported. The increase in hours for this position would change the position. Currently, it's classified as part-time, so it would change it to full-time. The total financial impact of this change is expected to be about $18,000 for a full fiscal year. But since we only have about 3 months remaining in the current fiscal year, it would be about $7,000 for the remainder of the current year. Additionally, the last change that's being proposed is actually a reduction in the hours for the senior accountant position from 40 hours to 36 hours per week. This is a relatively minor change in the total financial impact. It would be about a $10,000 savings annually to the general fund and about $4,000 for the remainder of the current fiscal year. So any questions on the staffing update side before we move into really the details of the general fund expenses?
That's the only staffing we're adding to this mid-year budget report?
Yes.
Being asked for?
Yes, yep.
So there's nobody being added to the public works crews, people that actually are on the roads?
That is
Any other
correct.
department, you know?
No other changes
We're buying a
being.
street sweeper, so we're gonna take one of the 5 people that are handling 100 miles of roads. I mean, you know what, we got so many people in the office, we need to have some more people on the roads. If we think we have the money to spend, I'm gonna advocate for that, always.
So, question, the grant, they're going to do a lot of grant work. I'm assuming that that's going to happen, I mean, let's just throw a number out there, it's going to be for another 10 years to do the grant work. I don't know. I don't know if it's 8 years or whatever. Then there comes a point that we're done with the grant work. We'll still be getting grants, don't get me wrong, I know we will. But it won't be as heavy as it is right now, probably. Are they absorbed into the staff by attrition? In other words, retirements and stuff like that, or do we cut the position?
Yeah, I think we could evaluate, like you said, down the road, once that position, you know, the needs of that position, if they're no longer needed 10 years from now, I could see that being absorbed, like you're saying, through natural attrition, retirements, people leaving, so forth.
Okay.
But if that didn't happen, Ross, would they be laid off then?
I think that would be up to the staff at the time, but yes, I could see that as a possibility.
Once the work is done, and we don't need, you know, as many people to do the workload, and we don't have attrition, I'm just saying, I mean, at some point.
Yeah, so there's an opportunity if that's necessary within the agreements for that. But the idea is truly is that we're looking further out there and that's through a
And the
attrition.
reason I ask that is we need it now. I get it, we need it
Yeah.
now. But we did at one time, there's a history here where we staffed up pretty heavily.
Yeah, and then we're stuck.
And then we were stuck.
And went broke.
And it was a tough road for us. So that's why I asked.
No, I trust you. You guys are a lot sharper than me.
That's not.
I was one of them.
All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and move into the details of the general fund first, starting with really a high-level overview here before we zoom into the details of the revenues and expenditures. So starting on the far left column here, I just wanted to provide a review of our currently amended budget, which includes $5.7 million in general fund revenues, which again, we'll look at the details here shortly, but it consists primarily of property and sales tax revenues. Moving down, we have transfers in budgeted at $13.29 million. This consists primarily of a transfer from the PG&E Settlement Fund of $11.2 million, as well as transfers from other funds of the town of $2.1 million. This is for central services allocations, as well as the departmental share of pension obligation bond payments. This brings the total budgeted revenues and transfers into the general fund at just over $19 million there, which matches the total expenditures that we have budgeted for a balanced general fund budget. Moving over to that next column to the right, we can take a look at our actuals to date. This encapsulates the first 7 months of the fiscal year, so looking at July 1st through the end of January. Again, we'll look at the details here shortly, but we've received a total of $3.5 million in revenues and expensed a total of $7.2 million so far. The difference there has been offset primarily by a transfer from the PG&E Settlement Fund of $3.7 million. Looking at the proposed amendments in the budget, the general fund expenses, we have additional proposed expenses of $145,000. Again, which we'll dive into the details of here shortly by department, which this would bring the total expenses that we would be proposing at $19.2 million for the fiscal year, up from $19 million currently. So starting out with the details here on the general fund revenues, kind of keep this fairly summarized here, is property tax and sales tax revenues, again, are really the largest two revenue sources for the town. These are typically received in two major allocations, at least for the property taxes. So you can see here the town's actually received that first allocation of property taxes, totaling $1.8 million of the budgeted $2.6 million. So looking really actually ahead of budget on that side of it. Moving down to the sales and use tax revenues here, the receipt of these funds typically lags a little bit behind due to the delayed processing on the state side. So currently the towns actually receive just the first quarter of those revenues, but as you can see here, it's actually about $300,000 that we've received just for one quarter. And based on trends that we've seen, we would expect those revenues to actually exceed what we had budgeted, about $1 million. So again, looking really great on that front as well. On the PG&E settlement side of things, shown as the transfer in, kind of towards the bottom, we've transferred, again, a total of about $3.7 million of the $11.2 million that we had budgeted. So far, we're actually quite a bit under the total budget. So again, looking really great on that front. All right.
Why do you think we're low on that? I mean,
So the main reason for that is actually some of our expenses are lagging behind. So as those
they'll get caught up.
Yeah. So those will be incurred later in the fiscal year, at which point we'll have a higher transfer to kind of accommodate for those expenses.
I was just going to praise you, but I guess not.
We just spent another $145,000.
All right, so with that, we'll go ahead and take a look at the general fund expenses for the first half of the year. Our actuals there shown in the second column from the left compared to the amended budget shown in the far left column. And all of the adjustments shown here on the far, or the sort of middle right column. So just to put things into perspective, overall, I would say our expenses are really tracking within what we had budgeted. So we have a total adjustment here that's being recommended of $145,000. Again, to kind of put that into perspective, we have a total current budget right now of $19 million. So that a recommended adjustment represents in total increase of under 1%, about 0.7% of our total annual budget. So just something to kind of keep in your mind as we go through the details here.
Trying to make us feel better.
Exactly, yeah. So with that, all of the recommended adjustments for the general fund have been kind of broken out and detailed by department. But I'll just touch on sort of the bigger ticket items here for you this evening. So starting out with the finance department, we've included an adjustment here of $7,000. This is the net current year effect of the accounting analyst and reduced hours for the senior accountant positions that we discussed a little earlier. The biggest adjustment that's being proposed here is included under the public works line item, which is $70,000 for the fleet department. This is for repair and maintenance supplies and services to support the department for the remainder of the fiscal year. There's a few factors that play into this adjustment. Primarily those additional costs above the original budget relate to the town having an additional mechanic on staff, which is up from just one mechanic that we had in prior years. So what we've seen is actually that department's able to keep up with regular maintenance on a regular basis, as opposed to really just more responding to emergency repairs as they pop up. In addition to that, inflation obviously has led to higher prices and parts than we previously expected. And then with the additional vehicles that the town's been purchasing, the size of the fleet's been growing, and the need for additional repairs and services has increased as a result of that as well.
But there's a little bit of an offset you can't quantify, because with two mechanics keeping better maintenance of the fleet, you're gonna have, there's some cost savings there that it's hard to quantify.
Exactly, and I think that's a piece of that, in talking with, the fleet department, is that, we are kind of catching up on some of those deferred maintenance activities from previous fiscal years. So this wouldn't be expected to kind of continue into the future, but can be seen as more of a one-time cost.
We also
for
have newer vehicles, so that should offset.
And a lot of them. We have a lot of them. Everybody's getting a vehicle. When does the council get a vehicle?
Hey, Russ, I don't see a line item for information technology. Is that covered someplace else?
Yeah, so there is a line item here for information technology. The interesting piece on this is it's actually a net zero effect to the general fund. So the total costs that we incur for the information technology department are offset from transfers from other funds. We have a technology improvement fund that's really charges incurred on all of the other revenue sources that the town brings in. And that offsets all of those technology fees. So it results in a net zero general fund impact. Kind of moving on with the Public Works Engineering Department, we've also included $18,000 as the net current year effect of the engineering intern and the increased hours for the administrative assistant position that we covered earlier, as well as an additional $5,000 to assist with the recruitment and hiring of some of the newly created positions this fiscal year. So that kind of covers the higher level expenses that are being brought forward in this adjustment. The total impact here is $145,000, $40,000 of which is expected to be offset by additional revenues. And then $105,000 would be recommended to transfer from the general or from the PG&E settlement fund to balance the general fund as a result of that. So speaking of that $105,000, I did want to provide just an update on sort of the impacts of that additional transfer to the fiscal sustainability model. So what I've included here in the top chart here in orange is what our current amended budget looks like when we project our current budget forward 25 years into the model. So of the $200 million that we have included for operating revenues or transfers going forward, after the 25-year projection period, we're currently expecting $62.4 million to be remaining at the end of that projection period. When bringing in that $105,000 additional transfer for this year and looking at the impacts of that going forward over the next 25 years, we would expect that balance to be reduced from $62.4 million to $60.2 million, so a reduction of about $2.2 million over that period.
Wait a minute. Okay, I get it. But we're adding some expenses, hiring some more people, doing the deal because we have all this going on. But part of the deal is like to Greg's point, in 10 years or at some point as some of the demand is reduced as projects are completed through attrition. So that to project that, the additional cost now over the whole 25 years isn't really a real number, is it?
We as accountants and finance people like to be conservative.
No, I get it, okay.
Okay.
I'm not, I mean, that's the way my mind works, it's just like, well, wait a
But-
minute, that's not really what.
But one thing that we're not accounting for is we do have 10% of the original amount set aside on top of this.
Yeah, so,
On top of that.
yep, so
Yeah.
this would have an additional $20 million as a sort of additional contingency on top of that, yeah.
There's a contingency fund.
Yep,
Good job. Always keep that in your back pocket.
yes, yeah, thanks for pointing that out.
Don't tell anybody about it. Let engineering department know about it.
And don't we also have a bit of an increase in our investment due to the increase in interest rates?
Yeah, and that's a great point. So currently, our investments are seeing about a 1.2% return. We currently have built into the model a more conservative estimate long-term of about 0.75. So there is additional funds that are available as a result of that as well.
Do we have factored in the look back to see how well our projections were as we, to what reality was so we can adjust our model based on that?
We do. So far, we really only have about a year and a half or
Right.
so of actuals, but that will be part of the review process going forward with each budget cycle as well. All right, perfect. So now shifting gears a little bit, we'll take a look at Measure V. So this is really just a high-level overview of the total activity in Measure V. We had a beginning unencumbered fund balance of just over $1.2 million to start the fiscal year. And again, we've only received the first quarter of revenues here, but we've actually received $384,000 of the 1.2 million that we had budgeted. So really, again, looking great here and it meeting or exceeding those original budget expectations. On the expenditure side of things, we had budgeted a total of $1.6 million in expenses, and we've incurred so far $536,000 of that. This includes $219,000 towards the prepayment of a fire engine that was budgeted this year, as well as $143,000 for initial payments towards the purchase of those new Chevy Tahoes that we had budgeted for. We've also incurred relatively minor costs for continued support of police training and beginning repairs to Station 81. And we've also incurred about $150,000 for continued support of the police canine program and animal control. So what this all translates to so far in the fiscal year is a currently unencumbered fund balance of just over $1 million compared to the budgeted ending fund balance of $773,000.
And all this was approved by Measure V committee?
Yes, so what we're looking at right here is the currently approved budget. We do have one recommended budget adjustment that we can look at actually on this next slide here. And this is actually just a reallocation of funds. This did go through the Measure V committee in January and was approved by them to be brought forward to council for ultimate consideration here tonight. And what this adjustment is a reallocation of about $75,000. So during the second quarter of the fiscal year, the town worked with Northern Recycling and Waste Services to secure $75,000 to be applied towards the purchase of the street sweeper that was budgeted to be purchased through Measure V. And we have a few items here that we have identified to reallocate that funding for within Measure V funds. The first of which is for the purchase of in-vehicle cameras for the 3 new Chevy Tahoes. This is actually good news. We didn't anticipate receiving these Tahoes until next fiscal year, at which point these items would have been budgeted. But we're actually seeing these come through and being completed earlier on this fiscal year. So shifting those costs back into this current fiscal year. We've also included $6,000 here for the support of an additional canine unit that the police department brought on this fiscal year. $4,000 of that is to upfit one of those Chevy Tahoes to support that canine. And then $2,000 is for ongoing training, food, and veterinary costs. We've also included here an additional $30,000 to be reallocated towards the current budgeted item of the fire utility vehicle. So this is like a pickup truck, basically.
Where's that?
Be driven around by fire staff, I guess.
They need utility trucks. They got them.
Let Cal Fire buy it.
So this is really just due to inflationary pressures that we've seen from the original quoted cost. And similarly, we have an additional $7,000 here towards the animal control vehicle that we had originally budgeted through Measure V. Any questions on Measure V in general?
Yeah, real quick. NRWS, are they continuing to receive those funds?
No,
They stopped that?
as of January 1.
Okay,
First year.
thank you.
And then we got.
Didn't see my bill go down, but I just...
Perfect. Well, with that, we'll go ahead and take a quick look at some of the other major funds that have adjustments that are being recommended here. And we'll go ahead and start with kind of taking a high-level overview of the PG&E Settlement Fund itself. Overall, I have really great news to report here. On the revenue side of things, we've actually received $689,000 so far in interest revenues, and that's compared to the $1.1 million that we had budgeted. So as was mentioned earlier, you know, that interest rate being increased over the year, we're really seeing the results of that in the PG&E Settlement Fund. And then just to kind of reiterate on the transfers out, we've transferred a total of $3.7 million of the $11.2 million that was budgeted, which has left us so far in the fiscal year with a balance of $214 million. And that's compared to the $207 million that's budgeted for this year. So overall, looking in great shape for the settlement fund. Just a few more funds to report on here. The Building Safety and Wastewater Fund, overall, really looking great in terms of actual activity compared to the budget. We did just have one recommended adjustment here, which is $5,700 to be applied towards the option to buy out a lease that the town is currently involved in. This is for a 2018 Chevy Colorado that is expiring here in February. So we have the option to purchase that vehicle at the end of that lease term. So that's what this $5,700 is for, and that would actually be offset by savings that's so far been recognized in the facilities improvement line item for this fund. Moving on to business and housing services, again, overall, this budget's really tracking within what we had originally anticipated. We did, however, have one additional need that was identified through the mid-year budget review, and that is for temporary staffing. So the housing department has seen a need to bring on an additional individual on a temporary basis for the remainder of this current fiscal year. So instead of hiring in-house for this position, this would be filled through a staffing agency. And the total cost of this is anticipated to be $20,000. The funding for this would come through the grant programs that this individual would be working on, which is primarily the Cal Home program that's currently expected.
And this, everything will be covered, you think, by the grant?
Yeah, so no general fund impact on this one. Gas tax, kind of second to last here. We did have some additional needs identified here, including $64,000 to support the maintenance of the town's streets for the remainder of the fiscal year. This includes $30,000 for vegetation management, $25,000 for traffic signals, $15,000 in additional rental equipment that would be offset by insurance funding, $10,000 for signs, $5,000 for drainage, an additional $4,000 for personal protective equipment to ensure the crews are safe out there while performing the work. Additionally, we had $5,700 on the other Chevy Colorado that the town's currently leasing, similar to the Building Safety and Wastewater Services Fund. We did have one other need that was identified after the agenda went out. This was due to a culvert that failed on Pence Road. We secured bids for this replacement that are coming in at $13,500. So that would be in addition to what's included in the agenda packet this evening. All additional costs that are being proposed would be absorbed by the gas tax reserves. So again, no general fund impact on these proposed adjustments. All right, and last but not least here, just taking a look at our capital improvement and disaster recovery funds. We have 3 adjustments here to the capital improvement plan. The first of which is $350,000 towards the sewer environmental survey. This project was anticipated to be funded originally through the State Water Board financial assistance funds, which have additional funds available, which would offset all of these additional costs here that are being proposed. We also have $150,000 that's being proposed to increase in funding towards the on-system hardscape replacement project and $37,000 towards the on-system culvert replacement project. These 2 projects are both budgeted to be funded through the Federal Emergency Relief Program at about an 80% cost share and CDBG DR funds at about a 20% cost share. And the increase in this budget would be funded through those similar funding opportunities. So again, no general fund impact for these proposals. And lastly, I'll just end things here by just highlighting some of the progress that's occurring so far in our capital improvement and disaster recovery projects, just to show sort of how much work is being done on these projects. So currently, we've expended a total of $2.8 million towards capital improvement projects and $7.3 million towards disaster recovery projects. These funds really come in on a reimbursement basis after the funds have been expended. So our Finance and Public Works Engineering Department is currently hard at working on those reconciliations and getting those funds back into the town. And those revenues would be expected to be received really later in the second half of the fiscal year. So that actually concludes the overview of the financial performance for the first 7 months of the year. So requested tonight is the action to receive and file the financial information that's been presented, approval of the engineering and finance position control changes, approval of the engineering intern and accounting analyst classifications, and then adoption of the salary pay plan that would incorporate those changes, as well as approval of the recommended budget adjustments, including the additional gas tax culvert replacement line item. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any additional questions, if any.
Any questions?
You know, I just want to compliment you on the absolutely great job. I don't understand spreadsheets. Numbers befuddle me sometimes. Ross, you make, $11 million budget financing the numbers make sense to me, just a common person. I appreciate what you've done.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody in the public, all three of you want to say something? Okay. Do I have a motion?
I so move.
Second.
Approve it.
Motion by Lassonde, seconded by Culleton, and this will adopt resolution number 2023-08 for the salary pay, the amended salary pay plan. Roll call vote, Councilmember Crowder,
Aye.
Councilmember Culleton.
Aye.
Councilmember Lassonde,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Tryon,
Aye.
and Mayor Boland.
Aye.
Thank you.
And Ross, I guess that's your last one for us, huh?
Yep, that's it.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. Hate to see you go.
Just let me know where you're going to be next when making the presentation. I'm going to show up in the audience.
Thank you, Ross. Great job.
Thanks, Ross, for all you've done.
Thank you. All right, 6G, consider reviewing and approving the memorandum of understanding with local nonprofits for lot acquisition for affordable housing and to adopt resolution number 2023-09.
Correct.
Hey. It'll take me all day to figure it out. Resolution for the town council of the town of Paradise directing the method of purchase of the lots for the construction of affordable housing and making findings related thereto. Who's got, okay.
That's me again.
Yes.
Good evening.
Still awake?
So if there's something that the housing depart, two things that the housing department has learned since the campfire. First is to be very creative, and second is learn to pivot. So in 2020, if you recall, there really weren't very many homes available for purchase, and what homes were available were extremely expensive, so out of the range of a low to moderate income household. So back in 2020, CDBG annual allocation plan included $135,771 toward lot acquisition for affordable homeownership. That was one part, getting the lots. The other part was how do we build? So in March of 2022, we applied for infill new construction dollars through the state. That is typically in urban areas where expensive properties, you put in a home that's affordable. In our case, we had no homes that were affordable, but we did have a lot of properties. And then in 2022, we also allocated a little more funding from CDBG in order to help us run this program. Well, plans changed a little bit. We did hear the council's desire for us not to acquire properties until we were ready to construct, so we put off the lot acquisition. In March of 22, I apologize, in July of 22, the state suspended their first-time homebuyer program under which the infill new construction falls. So we were kind of between a rock and a hard place. We needed to spend some CDBG funds, but we couldn't do it for this proposed program. So we came up with a way of kind of doing both. We are experiencing a timeliness issue with our CDBG funds, so it would be very advantageous for us to spend this $135,771 before May 1st. It will really help us retain our CDBG entitlement. So we, in talking with our HUD reps, we came up with the idea of having the town purchasing the lots, but having them still for the general national objective of affordable home ownership, but to bring in some nonprofits that would help us. The town is not owning the properties, the nonprofits are. So that's where the development of this MOU comes about. It works with CHIP and Habitat for them to do their self-help builds. And it works with North Valley Housing Trust, who is willing to hold these properties for our infill new construction program. We did hear word in December, this past December, that we were awarded the $700,000 for the infill, and that was quickly stated that we have no access to those $700,000 because those funds are still suspended. So we're asking you tonight to consider, review, and accept the memorandum of understanding, and to review and accept the resolution presented to you, the associated resolution. It was drafted by our town council, and it clarifies that this MOU arrangement is not a gift of public funds and will not result in, affordable homeownership. There's no effect on the general fund, and like I stated earlier, it would really help us to spend these funds, the $135,000, before May 1st.
Only government, you have to spend money to not lose it. So question, North Valley Housing Trust, that's where the property would sit. What do they gain by holding the property? I mean, they gotta have some model in which this,
Yep.
how's that work for them?
So their mission is affordable housing and programs within Butte County. They currently have property in Orville that they are looking to, they have an MOU that was what our MOU was modeled after. And it is proposed for development, affordable housing development in Orville.
So once the house is sold, they get a portion of those funds, those proceeds back to them?
No, not necessarily. Their mission is to further affordable housing in the county. So they are assisting in the project of providing that.
So they don't get any money, any funds?
None at the very moment. We are considering talking with North Valley Housing Trust, North Valley Community Foundation. They have some funding available. So we're going to see if some of it's for single-family homes. We're going to see if any of those funding sources are available, even if it's just to help them pay for the taxes and taxes, insurance, and property maintenance on these, because they will be responsible for that. We're hoping that our funds will, at the state, become available shortly. Originally in July, they told us 3 months. We're into 6 months. So the MOU is only for 2 years, I believe, 2 or 3 years for them to hold it. They don't want to get stuck with the land, but we do want to have that available to us.
Okay.
You mentioned Habitat for Humanity.
Correct.
So we got CDBG money that we can use to buy a piece of a lot.
Yep.
Okay, so why can't we give that, let Habitat for Humanity put a family out and build a house on it?
Right. Now, and there are 3 organizations. All their mission statements are to assist with affordable housing in the way of affordable home ownership. So it meets the objective that we're trying to do, and we can give them to Habitat, we can give them to CHIP, and we could...
Because Habitat just put a flyer right now. You can sign up.
Right. Their mission is to build 10 houses for the next 3 years. So they will need lots, but they are going out. So it may be with Habitat. It could be with Habitat. CHIP has a similar self-help, so it could be with them.
But doesn't CHIP end up owning the thing and running it?
No, it's affordable homeownership.
Oh, okay.
Very similar to Habitat.
So they end up, the family will end up owning the home.
Exactly.
So what's the criteria for determining which lots are purchased? And are you looking at purchasing like a group of lots in one area, or how is that?
So we can only purchase what's available. Right. So if some are close by, that might help. We are looking for lots that can support a modest housing. We don't necessarily want to put a very small lot, a very small house on a very large lot. So they would probably be some of the smaller lots in town as long as they have good septic capacity and all of that. So it's, honestly, we anticipate that it might be between 4 and 5 lots that we can acquire, and we're looking at some of the lowest price lots.
Yeah, you only got $175,000 or something, right?
135,
Yeah,
right.
so you're not gonna buy that many lots.
Right.
You're not building the site.
Exactly. However, I will mention that we do have this MOU might be able to be used. We have some loans on properties where owners are not rebuilding.
Yeah, okay, from the old program.
Correct.
Yeah.
Pre-fire. So we may bring next some incentive to acquire properties back from homeowners.
Your comments were, well, to me, there were a lot of moving parts. I just wanted to clarify that you're just asking us for approval to expend the $135,771 and enter into an MOU with these nonprofits. That's really what you're asking? Or is there
Correct.
more to it than that?
Nope, that's it tonight.
Okay.
Plenty more to come.
Any questions?
You must need a utility vehicle.
Any cards?
I have no cards on this item.
Anybody wish to speak to this? Seeing none, what's the wish of the council?
I move for approval.
I will second it.
Motion by Tryon, seconded by Lassonde. Roll call vote, Councilmember Crowder.
Aye.
Councilmember Culleton.
Aye.
Councilmember Lassonde.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Tryon.
Aye.
And Mayor Boland.
Aye, and Kate, thank you for being innovative and looking for options. Appreciate that. Okay, council initiated items. So we had talked about the professional landscape blowing, and I think Mr. Lindsay has something to report.
Mark, can you peel up my slide?
Yeah, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
Thanks for sticking around.
Got it.
Thanks for having me.
I had to keep him awake while I was out.
So, the Paradise Municipal Code provides us an ordinance that prohibits those types of actions. And through the municipal code, we have administrative signs and notices of violation. But recognizing that many residents may not be aware of this ordinance, we created courtesy door hangers that we can provide the residents to let them know, give them the opportunity to voluntarily, comply and maybe gather anything that we've seen. Of course, we can always, if they become egregious violators, we have the tools the council provided us to, enforce our regulations. And a report.
So if you see something or hear something, you can just go hang it on the door so they have a reminder of what needs to happen.
Exactly.
So am I allowed to get a copy of this and hang it on my neighbor's door that's blowing his leaves down into the...
Here you go, Ron.
So does this only apply to public roads?
Public and private rights of way.
Public, you say private rights, you mean that?
Private roads.
Private roads.
Can I have a pre-signed one?
Not a right.
Oh,
Just fill out the address. And check out the.
Check the right box and fill out the address and tell them that Roy sent them.
Exactly.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And it's,
Please don't do that.
It's only a courtesy, right?
Unless you preface it with, in my opinion, Roy sent them.
Yeah, but if you do need a courtesy sent,
Please let our code
Tony
enforcement
know,
officers do
please.
it, because they're also available to answer any questions
you
that.
just woke up legal.
Because I might get a phone call at 11 o'clock at night.
That was good. Thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank
That's
you.
a great idea.
Tony, is this the thing, this little paper thing, or is it gonna be a heavier card?
It'll be on a heavier card stock. This was just an example,
This is gonna.
as we get it, but they're a temporary notice, right, that we can put out. Okay, thank you.
Nail it to the door. Okay, is there, well, let's do council reports, committee representation. First one, sure.
Okay, so I briefly attended the COC meeting, and there, because I had another meeting I had to go to. The only thing that was good there I got was there's Habitat for Humanity has got an open period to sign up for it if you want to get a house built. Today I got to participate with Colette and Colette, what is your assistant's name?
Jacqueline?
Jacqueline. Really, she's cool. She's really nice, and she's moving to town.
She is,
Yeah, she's
yeah.
gonna move to town. That's great. So we had a few people that we gave $5,000 checks to as part of our business, whatever it's called, enhancement program.
Investments.
And these were existing businesses and that was really very rewarding. The only caveat was that I don't drink, and one of the people I had to give a check to was Jen's place, the local bar. And so I was tempted to have a beer, but because the meeting tonight I did. And then Vice Mayor Tryon and I attended the Solid Waste Committee meeting this morning, and I'll let her give the update on what's happening. Exciting news that's happening soon for the residents of Paradise and probably half of Butte County. And that's my report. Huh? Well, no, you can do something about the recycling.
Hi, so I started off with, where am I? On the 19th, I took a tour of our current projects with our Public Works Director, Mark Maddox. So, Mark, thank you very much for your time and showing me the projects. I appreciate that. On the 26th, I attended the Butte County Air Quality Management District meeting. I've been representing the town of Paradise on it for the last 2 years. I was once again elected to the executive board and also to the finance committee for that organization. On February 11th, I attended the ribbon cutting for the Best Place for Mom, which is a new business in town that is supporting nursing mothers. They've just done a really nice job, and it was very well attended, and it was really a pleasure to meet the two ladies who have started that business. It's pretty incredible. And then solid waste management meeting was today, and just a reminder, the green waste yard is still open Fridays and Saturdays from 9 to 3. We will have a hazardous household waste collection on February 25th. And then we're hoping to have one about every 6 months. So that would be for hazardous household waste. That's my report.
Perfect.
Do you have a time that it's going to be open? I tried to look at their website to pass that information on, and I couldn't see anything on there about the hazardous waste.
I think it was the same 9 to 3,
Was
wasn't
it
it?
9 to 3 or 10 to 3 or something like
Okay.
that? Yeah.
And it's February 25th.
And that'll be the same people who run the county one at the airport. They're gonna be doing it at our facility.
At our facility, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, same place as it used to be before fire, right?
Right. And it'll be,
American Way.
you can also bring electronics, anything with a cord and a circuit board, that same time.
Yeah, the e-waste.
And then also, the recycling center is on schedule to be opening, we're hoping in April, by a subcontractor. It'll be open, what did they say, 4 days a week? And it'll be open like 9 to 4, something like that, but don't quote me on the time. And it'll be done in the same facility it was. But you can also drop off cardboard there for free, and which you can also drop off right now at the green waste yard if you have new appliances and things.
Wednesday through Saturday, 9 to 4.
9 to 4, Wednesday through Saturday, the recycling center is scheduled to be open. They're hoping, trying really hard, come April. We're waiting on Cal Recycle to issue a new permit.
Okay, Ron?
Yes, sir. I attended the League of California Cities for new Academy for New Mayors and new council members, and the subjects they covered there were harassment prevention training for officials, developing an effective council and city manager team, legal powers on obligation, policy rules and land use planning, and social and media, digital communications, and civic engagements. That last one was pretty interesting when they were talking about
things that you should and should not put out on Facebook, et cetera, as a member of the town council, and all the other types of things. They also push the idea that we should be engaging in not just Facebook, but all those other social media things, because the younger folks just aren't reading newspapers and they're really not watching television. They're streaming stuff all the time. And so if we want to reach the younger crowd, we sort of have to change our ways, is what their point of view was on that. But be careful what you put out there. It's a two-edged sword. Next thing, I did attend the Butte County Consolidated Oversight Board that supervises the winding down of the former RDA for the town of Paradise. There was a very lively discussion at the end of that about the fact that the town's RDA and the repayment of the bonds, and Kevin was there and he can speak more to that, but at the end of it, he got an action item to provide a 10-year plan that outlines how the former RDA will repay the bonds. We did mention that the town council said they were not going to float the RDA, the former RDA, alone to repay the bonds. And so that, again, triggered some lively discussion about who's paying what and when and those kinds of things. And again, I'll defer to Kevin to speak more intelligently about it. But in the end, just a 10-year plan needed to be submitted from the town. I attended the BCAG was canceled for February, but I did attend as an alternate the Butte County Air Quality Management District. Rose was so kind to introduce me to all the folks, to let them know that I'd be there if she's not able to make it there. I attended a building and industry stakeholder meeting at the Brick, and there was a detailed discussion on wildfire-resistant home. As you know, it's a program by the Institute for Business and Home Safety and how their certification process worked. I've already sent links to their website to several people that I met down at the League of California Cities Academy, because they were asking about, well, what's your insurance like and how are you guys going to have affordable insurance? I said, well, there's a plan being worked, and it's going to help, and it's not quite there yet, but here's where the link is. Go there and start talking to those folks, and because there are other cities that are running into that same kind of issue. Last but not least, I attended a code enforcement ride-along with Roy Wallace, and it was very informative. And he reiterated multiple times that there are people at the end of that code enforcement, and that we have to keep that in mind. The decisions we make impact on individuals, and it's just not a piece of paper that we're talking about. And like I said, it was a very eye-opening tour around the town to places I'd never been and things I had not seen in our town in my drive around here. Oh, and one last thing. I was part of the team with Councilmember Crowder and Colette to hand out $5,000 checks to folks, and that was a very fun task to take on, because not one of them complained about us. They all were happy. That's it.
Well, Ron and I did the Planning Commission interviews, and you saw the gentleman we recommended tonight that was selected. I spent last week in D.C. With a group called After the Fire. It was comprised of a lot of different individual fires: Carr Fire, Tubbs Fire, Woolsey Fire in Southern California, Superior Fire in Michigan. I'm sorry, Marshall Fire in Superior, Michigan. So we visited California legislators, we visited Colorado legislators, we visited Texas and House Ways and Means, Senate Finance Committee, U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and all to garner support of why this bill that LaMalfa is pushing is very important for the fire victims to be tax exempt. We had very positive meetings, so I don't understand why it hasn't passed yet, but there's a procedure they go through, a scoring procedure, and the bill itself doesn't score very well, so it's going to get packaged with somebody else, with something else. It will not happen before summer, no matter what. So taxes this year, you're either going to have to file and pay them or file for an extension. The consensus is everybody's feeling good that it's going to get passed, just no timetable. It was really impactful to have these different people listening, all these legislators listen to the different stories, because everybody went through something different. all from different walks of life, different fires, different backgrounds, different political parties, and all there for one thing, and it was to advocate for their communities. So it was a great trip. Ron covered the delivering the checks. I went up actually with Mayor Boland to Pine Ridge School. They're breaking ground on a new addition to that school. They're just doing wonderful things with the school, so it's well underway actually. So that's pretty well what I have done.
Yeah, that was a good event, and groundbreaking, they've already started, so.
Yeah.
Building's half up, but, you know, a little late, but that's all right. It was great, and a bunch of kids were out there and stuff, and so that was cool. Did go to LAFCO, and so I guess Paradise's seat is, I thought it was up next year, but it's up May of this year. And so with the council's permission, I guess, I'm gonna fight that we keep that seat. Because we got enough stuff coming up, we need it. So it could get ugly. I know Chico's really wanting the seat, and but I just think we have too much stuff going on to walk away from it. So I'm gonna fight for it, see what happens. Pray for me. Huh?
How is it up? I thought it
Well, it's 4-year increments, and this one started, I thought it started in 20, it started in 19. And we've had this seat, I've been going to it for like 6 years, so we've had it for a while, but I just think, you know, Chico gets everything they want, you know, basically. But I want to be sensitive to the fact, you know, we're partners, and we're partners in the sewer system and all that, so I don't want to, but we do have a lot of stuff coming up with different things that I think we need the seat, so.
But are they gonna take the seat away from us?
Yeah, it's only 2 mayors of 2 cities that can be on it.
On LAFCO.
On LAFCO, right, so they I don't know if it's an arm wrestle or dueling or something, I'm good for either one of them, but I don't know how it works.
Is there anything we can do to help support you?
Well, if you have any relationships with the other mayors, you know, to help us get a vote, I just got to get enough mayors to vote for Paradise into that situation. And I'm working on a couple of them, but anyway, that's a big thing. And I know there's going to be a little fight there, so anyway.
We should show up in our utility vehicles.
Okay, any future agenda items you guys have?
Yes, I do, of course.
You said you weren't going to talk this whole time.
I didn't on the first half.
Okay.
You know, I got this winning the square. I'd like to, on the next meeting, I'd like to have a conversation about the emergency ordinance that's gonna expire in April. I think we should have a conversation about it before we get to April, just a conversation about it. And then the other thing is, I've had a few people, somebody spoke tonight about it, apparently our zoning is such that if you have a residentially zoned property, unless you have a building on it, you can't have anything on it. Okay, you can't have a shed, you can't store anything on a lot you own unless you have a house on it. And it has to do, from what I understand from talking to staff, it goes with the zoning. So I'd like to talk about that also, like, can we, as we're still in the rebuilding, process, like this fellow spoke tonight, and a letter some of you may have gotten, I got from somebody that's 80 years old driving from Nevada to keep his lot clean. He has a trailer on it just simply to store his tools in, so he doesn't drive it. I mean, you know, I don't want to turn the place into junkyards, but if somebody's, I don't know, let's talk about it. I think, you know, see whether there's any relief that we can give citizens here.
You got that, Dina? Okay,
Thanks.
good to go. Managers report?
Yep, so I'm going to turn it over to Susan. She's got a lot of exciting things to talk about, but I will talk about the RDA with the Butte County Oversight Commission or Council or whatever it is. There was a lively discussion about the repayment of the RDA bonds. They're looking for a 10-year projection, and the question I asked them is, who's going to give me the crystal ball to tell us when this is going to happen? And no one can answer that. The biggest key, though, that our 10-year projection for the RDA bond repayment is investment into the RDA, which includes the sewer service area. So that's where we're going to move forward with on that report, is that by investing into the sewer, we're investing into the RDA, which eventually will repay those bonds. So as you go into default on bonds, it doesn't mean that those bonds go bye-bye. It means that those interest and principal accrues on top of the bonds. So eventually, those bonds will have revenue associated with repayment of those, and they will eventually be repaid through the investment into the RDA. So just want to kind of clarify what that 10-year projection is going to look like and what the report back will be to them. With that, I'll turn it over to Susan.
Thank you. Good evening, council. Well, I recognize you. Hi. So I just wanted to give council some updates on some projects that we're working on in community development. Next week's our planning commission meeting, and we have two big projects going, both affordable housing projects. One's a 140-unit multifamily development on Cypress Lane. That is 70 units of senior housing, and that's 62 and above, and then 70 units of family apartments, and that's 1 to 3 bedrooms. And so because of the funding sources behind it, part of that's through the town's allocation of multifamily disaster funds to use towards it, but also tax credits. So these are multi-decade deed-restricted affordable housing developments, at least 50 years. The other project is on Upper Pence Road at the corner of Kingdom. There's where Southern Ridge Baptist is, right? So there was a vacant piece of property just north of that that has an existing use permit to allow them to build a 30-bed assisted living facility, but instead they're looking to do just 21 senior apartments. Same thing, deed restricted 55 years for affordability. This is 62 and above. So those two projects will go to hearing next week, plus some other things that we've got also. Recently, staff has been approached by and worked with the Paradise Plaza representatives of the owner, it's what we locally call the Kmart Shopping Center, about some tenant space for Ross up there and what their timelines are for that. Ross.
We can say that word now?
We can say that word now.
Are the plans turned in?
No, right now, the shopping centers are responsible for getting the space gutted and the facade put on and ready for them by May, and then Ross will take over and they'll do the infill part.
Okay. Good.
Exciting. So you'll see those coming soon banners.
Do they take all the rest of the Kmart?
They will not, just a portion of it, and still working on other tenants, which is great. They've had phenomenal success in filling those spaces. We also worked with, I believe it to be a potential buyer versus just a leaser of Old Barn Kitchen or Rock and Rooster, whatever name you know it by, there on Lower Clark by Bushman. They approached us about getting the mailing list for their ABC license. This gentleman owns a sushi restaurant in Magilla, and this would be their second restaurant, so we're very excited. It's a great building to use, so they've been coming in, just getting some more information about the work they need to do there. And then just to follow up with some of the council members who may not be aware, but the town's wastewater division, which operates under community development, all of our standards for installation repairs, reporting, it's all part of a local agency management program that is adopted or approved through the State Water Board. So every year, we report back to them how many repairs we had, how many inspections we did, notices we sent, complaints we fielded, and then every 5 years, we do a water assessment. You know, so twice a year, our staff goes out and samples streams and creeks throughout town, dry season, wet season. And this is just a much more robust reporting requirement on year 5. And what that allows us to do is continue to get a waiver from having to do a waste discharge permit through the state and continue to operate under our LAMP, our local agency management program. So we submitted that back showing the great results we've had. You know, we're not new to this. We've been doing this since the early 90s. We're very good at it. And you can ask for up to 5 years, right? And then we'll do this again. So we'll continue to report annually and then do another 5 years. But we've asked for the waiver, turned in our documentation. So yeah, very proud of that team.
Is that a
It's
self-testing thing, or they come and do it? Is it?
for the streams and creeks,
Yeah.
Bob does it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Good.
Absolutely. So, yeah, it's a small crew, but
Yeah.
they're good at what they do.
Yeah.
And those are our updates. So if you guys, hear of any projects, you're ever interested in finding out some info for, feel free to reach out to us. We'll update you on what you're seeing out
I
there.
haven't heard anything on Holiday Market, whether there's something else there, have you?
Nothing specific, just that, they know the situation and they're just reaching out to try to fill it.
Sure, okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Does Bobby know?
Yeah.
Is that staff, has he got like some other people that are studying under him, understand, you know what I mean? Like, at some point, there's, people retire or whatever.
Never.
But you've got a good complement of people.
We do. We were fortunate enough to bring on, a full-time inspector a couple years ago. We got that position approved, so he's got some help now out in the field. We just filled 2 days, actually yesterday, I guess. We finally got the last person backfilled because we had a retirement. It's taken us a while to get somebody to fill that. So, yeah, they've got 5 full-time people now.
Nice.
Yes.
If somebody gets sick or things happen,
Yeah, they want these vacations. Yeah. Just kidding. Yeah, that's all. So yeah, that's just the offer that, if you guys see anything out there, feel free to give us a call and we'll tell you what we know about it.
Good news. Thank you
Yeah,
very much.
thank you.
Appreciate it. All right, I neglected to report that in our closed session, there was no reportable action taken. Direction was given. So that was on our closed session meeting, so I failed to get that out. We were rushing to get going.